The midday sun cast a gentle warmth upon the battered towers of King's Landing, bringing a quiet sparkle to the remnants of the city that was once the throbbing heart of the Seven Kingdoms. The scars of dragonfire lay everywhere still, blackened stones, broken domes, collapsed rooftops. Banners bearing the newly minted sigil of King Bran, the three-eyed raven on a field of pristine white, draped from the spires that had survived Daenerys Targaryen's fury. Yet, for all its recent pain, the city breathed anew. Fishermen once again gathered by the docks, their small craft bobbing on the rippling waters of Blackwater Bay. Merchants erected stalls along narrow, winding lanes. Clean water rushed into the city through repaired aqueducts. Dust still danced on the air, but hope pulsed beneath its haze. Samwell Tarly walked the charred remains of the Red Keep's courtyard, flanked by a pair of guards. They wore the emblems of the new king and kept a polite distance from him, perhaps still unsure if they ought to salute or kneel whenever he paused. It was strange to him how everything could turn so quickly that he, Sam Tarly, once a fearful boy cowering beneath his father's lash, would become Hand of the King. He could feel the weight of the honor pressing against his chest with every step he took, as though he carried a monstrous chain around his neck. The chain of office, ironically, was the one thing in the Citadel he had not yet earned, but here he was, wearing a pin in the shape of the hand, perfectly forged to the shape of his broad chest. It had been only a moon's turn since the council, that final moment when the lords and ladies had gathered after the destruction left by the Dragon Queen. They had named Bran Stark the new king, and in the swirl of new titles, new loyalties, Sam had found himself stepping into a role he had never anticipated. Tyrion Lannister, bowing gracefully out of necessity more than desire, had recommended Sam for the post. Bran had concurred. The other lords, battered by war and exhausted from endless conflicts, had not objected. Sam had not even been able to stammer out a protest before the pronouncement was made. Perhaps Bran knew something he did not, that calmness of vision in the young king's eyes seeing hidden futures. Or perhaps it was a simple matter of needing to fill a seat once so precariously occupied by those with far less moral standing. Sam had left the courtyard behind and moved through corridors partly open to the sky, their ceilings collapsed. Workmen and masons toiled among the stones, stacking supplies, chiseling broken blocks into squares, building scaffolding. They would have to rebuild the entire Red Keep, piece by piece, strong enough to endure a new age. Sam spoke gentle words to the workers as he passed, receiving shy smiles or short bows. Some recognized him, the young man from the Citadel who had once served at the wall. Others knew only that he was the new Hand, a portly figure with a soft voice and a kinder face than the officials of old. Winded by the walk, he finally emerged onto the open expanse where the throne room had once stood. The grand hall had been fractured by dragonfire and partially caved in. The rubble had been cleared away, and wooden planks formed a temporary dais upon which a modest seat had been placed for King Bran. The Iron Throne was no more, melted by Drogon's wrath. The Targaryen seat of conquest had vanished into legend. In its place rose the beginnings of a simpler seat, a large wooden chair, just enough for a king who did not crave grandeur. Sam looked upon it and felt a pang of bittersweet relief. That monstrous throne had caused so much strife, had drawn so much blood. Perhaps the new seat, humble and unassuming, was what the realm truly needed. He approached and found King Bran already seated, face placid, eyes distant as if he stared at something far beyond the broken columns of the hall. Bran's hair, dark with subtle streaks of auburn, fell just past his ears. He wore a cloak of black that spilled over the arms of his wheelchair and draped neatly upon the dais. The embroidered sigil, the three-eyed raven, seemed alive in the shifting sunlight. Brienne of Tarth stood to Bran's right in polished armor, regal and steady. She offered Sam a courteous nod. Bronn, Lord of Highgarden, was there as well, wearing a cloak of green and gold. His hands rested on his belt, where a dagger and short sword hung in place of the long sword he more often carried, giving him an air of a man half at ease, half wary. Davos Seaworth, now master of ships, was beside him, a quiet, thoughtful presence with short graying hair. Tyrion Lannister's presence was missing. He had drifted from council duties in the last fortnight, making himself scarce. Yet it was Tyrion who had first proffered Sam's name for this duty, leaving him to preside over councils he'd once observed in awe. Sam cleared his throat as he neared, and Bran's cool gaze refocused. "Your Grace," Sam said, offering an awkward half-bow. Bran inclined his head, no trace of judgment in his eyes. "Sam," he said, "you've come from the city's old quarter?" "Yes," Sam replied, stepping carefully around the broken flagstones. "The city stirs with new life, Your Grace. It's slow, but the people have begun to find some measure of normalcy." Bran's gaze wandered, as if he could see them all in his mind's eye. The orphans picking through ash-strewn alleys, the blacksmiths forging nails for construction, the haggard families crowding the open squares. "They will need guidance," said Bran. "They will need hope." Brienne shifted slightly. "The Winterfell men arrived early this morning, escorting grain and salted meats. We'll be able to distribute food across the city within the next few days." Davos gave a nod. "Sails have been spotted along the Blackwater. I have 2 ships bringing livestock and flour from the Reach, courtesy of House Redwine. We'll have to watch the pricing, though. Some of those lords like to line their pockets." Bronn snorted. "Some, right? Most, you mean?" Sam glanced down at his hands, remembering the pages of ledgers he had studied all morning. "The Crown's funds are stretched," he began. "We're using what gold we have to pay for repairs to the city's walls, for carpenters, masons, blacksmiths, for roads, for shipments of goods, not to mention the cost of supporting the Crown's functions. If we're not careful, House Redwine's generosity might come at a cost we can't afford to repay. Our only recourse would be to raise taxes again, but the people are so thinly stretched. Too many lost their homes or their livelihoods in the siege." Bran's voice was soft. "We cannot starve them of hope, Sam." "No," Sam murmured, remembering that sense of finality when Drogon's flames had consumed everything. Felt obscene now to ask these broken people to pay more. "But we need a steady flow of coin from somewhere. We have no time to wait for a full harvest. The people are hungry now." Bronn waved a dismissive hand. "We can negotiate. The Reach has the grain, and we have the throne. The Redwines or Tarleys." Bronn stopped abruptly at the mention of the Tarley name, glancing at Sam with an uncharacteristic flash of shame. "Sorry, mate," he offered softly, recalling that Sam's father and brother had both perished under Daenerys's reign. Sam forced a small, tight-lipped smile. "No need for apologies," he said, even though the words still tasted bitter on his tongue, a reminder of old wounds. "The Tarley lands are productive, but the seat, well, the seat is in transition." Sam paused, uncertain how he felt about the future of Horn Hill. There had been talk of him becoming its rightful lord, though he had sworn brotherhood in the Night's Watch once. So many old laws had been shattered, so many new ones had begun to form. "But I do agree that negotiations will be key. Maybe House Tyrell's old bannermen can be convinced to loosen their hold on their excess, for a fair price that won't beggar the Crown. And if we can promise them some manner of recompense when summer returns, that might help." Bran lifted his hand, and the conversation halted. "Master of Coin," he said slowly, turning to Bronn, "ensure these negotiations don't spiral out of our means. We will not starve our people for a debt we can't repay." He then looked at Sam with a faint curve to his lips. "I have faith the hand will find a path. He knows more about hunger and fear than many men in court." The memory of his time in the Night's Watch flickered through Sam's mind. Shivering in the snow, huddled beside the direwolves, worried about the White Walkers who threatened the entire realm. He bowed his head in acknowledgement of the king's words. After the brief meeting, Brienne and Davos escorted Bran away to his next engagement. A petition from the Dornish delegates hoping for a measure of autonomy that they had once possessed. Sam made his way toward the old Tower of the Hand, or what was left of it. So much had collapsed in the fires that he hardly recognized it. A section of the tower had been hastily reinforced with wooden beams and scaffolding, and a corridor extended beyond a half-burnt arch to a suite that had miraculously survived. It was a small cluster of rooms, but enough to serve as his office and personal chambers. He passed by a row of stained glass windows, half broken, the color tinted by soot and ash. Light filtered through in irregular patterns, scattering upon the stone floor. Inside his office, the air smelled of fresh parchment, horse glue, and a hint of chalky dust from the newly plastered walls. He let out a long breath and sank into a chair behind a wooden desk that had been salvaged from the rubble of the Red Keep storerooms. Stacks of documents and ledgers demanded his attention: supply tallies, trade proposals, pleas for assistance from lords across the realm, requests for audience from impoverished villagers, lists of repairs needed in King's Landing. Each day, the piles grew higher, testing his resolve. Yet he would not shy away. He wanted to do this for John, for the memory of the sacrifices made, for the dream of a better world. As he picked up the topmost scroll, sealed with a smudged wax stamp from an uncertain minor house, a timid knock sounded at the door. Sam glanced up and saw Podrick Payne. The young man had grown into a capable squire and was now sworn to Brienne. He poked his head around the half-open door and smiled. "Sir Brienne asked me to inform you that the king will be holding court this afternoon," Podrick said, a gentle tremor of politeness in his voice. Sam nodded. "Thank you, Pod. Do you know who's set to appear?" "Mostly lords from the Crownlands. You're a lord hand," he replied. Pod had come a long way from the shy boy Tyrion had once teased. Still, he looked uncertain about how to address Sam. Most people did these days. But Sir Brienne said it might be best if you were there, in case the king needs advice. "I'll come," Sam said, rising. "Though I can't guarantee my advice will be swift." Pod gave him a small grin. "I think they appreciate thoroughness." Sam stood, smoothing his rumpled tunic. He felt the pang of hunger in his belly. He'd hardly eaten breakfast. He wondered if there was any food left in the kitchens or if the day's bread ration had run out. The thought of more watery stew made him grimace, but it was nourishment enough. No matter. He had a duty now, and his hunger would wait. He moved toward the courtyard that joined to the throne's makeshift dais. A line of petitioners stood behind a cordon of spears held by the guards. Men and women of various standing waited for their moment to approach the new king. Soldiers of the city watch, clad in black surcoats embroidered with the three-eyed raven, lined the route. The monarchy's new sigil was everywhere, signifying the transition from an age of Targaryen conquest to the era of Bran the Broken. Bran had no taste for pomp or theatrics, so these gatherings were relatively informal compared to the legendary courts of the old kings. Yet that did not make them easier. Among the crowd, Sam caught sight of old lords who had once bent the knee to Daenerys only to remain in the city after her death. He saw tradesmen wearing worn cloaks, hoping for funds to repair workshops or grain to feed families. He saw a few ladies dressed in threadbare finery, presumably to petition for some measure of influence or favor. The murmurs quieted as Sam passed, and though he felt their eyes upon him, he resisted the urge to fidget. He was the king's hand after all. He took his place to the left side of Bran, who sat in a simple wooden chair upon the dais. In front of them, petitioners approached one by one. Sir Brienne stood to Bran's right, an imposing figure in shining armor. She said little, but her presence commanded respect. Sam took a breath and listened as the first petitioner, a young lord from a small holding outside the city, described the raids of bandits upon his farmland. He asked for men-at-arms to quell the threat. Bran listened quietly, occasionally turning his head as though to glean more detail than the words themselves revealed. Once the man had finished, Bran glanced at Sam. Sam leaned forward. "His lands are close to the Rosby Road," he murmured. "We do have some city watch we could send, but we're stretched thin. Maybe we can request aid from Lady Rosby's garrison or offer some incentive for their knights to patrol the area." Bran nodded. "We will speak to Lady Rosby. In the meantime, you may have a contingent of 15 from the city watch to assist in rooting out these outlaws. Report any further developments." The young lord bowed, gratitude shining in his eyes, and moved away. The next petitioner was a thin tradesman who had lost his workshop in the fires, and Sam tried to find a solution within the coffers and the labor resources they had. And so it went, name after name, face after face, each one seeking relief, a hearing, or justice for wrongdoing. Bran's responses were measured, and he relied on Sam more than once to propose workable solutions. At times, Sam worried that he was overstepping, but Bran's serene expression gave no hint of disapproval. Instead, he seemed to encourage Sam's input. It reminded Sam of the early days when he would help John with records at Castle Black, though the stakes now were far higher. By late afternoon, Sam's feet were numb from standing upon the dais, and his belly felt hollow as a dried wineskin. The sun had drifted across the sky, illuminating the swirling dust in the air. Just when Sam thought the day's audiences might finally be over, a group of figures entered, wearing cloaks of desert orange and gold. At their heads stood a woman with a sharp chin and eyes of dark coal. Behind her, a pair of guards displayed the Sun and Spear sigil. Sam stiffened. These were Dornish delegates. He recalled the note from earlier that they wished to speak with the king regarding independence or at least special status. Dorne had always stood apart, proud and remote. Under Targaryen conquest, they had eventually entered the Seven Kingdoms through marriage alliances, not by the sword. With the realm in pieces, it seemed the Dornish might be seeking to reassert their old ways. Bran did not betray any sign of surprise. He merely adjusted in his seat, gazing at them with that distant calm. Ser Brienne's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The woman leading the Dornish party bowed with a flourish, her golden necklaces rattling. "Your Grace," she said in a lilting accent. "I am Ilaria Jourdain of the Tor. I come on behalf of the rulers of Dorne to request that you consider renewing our ancient treaty by which we governed ourselves in peace while still paying homage to the Iron Throne. We prefer to remain independent in all but name." Tension clung to the air. Sam's heart pounded, remembering how fractious the realm had become. Sansa Stark had demanded the North become an independent kingdom under her rule, and Bran had allowed it. That set a precedent. If Dorne wished to follow that route, it could further fracture the Seven Kingdoms. Yet was that so terrible? Sam recalled his own words in the Dragon Pit that all the lords and ladies should choose their leaders. They had chosen Bran as king, but clearly some remained uneasy. Bran's voice was cool as winter. "Dorne is part of the realm." Ilaria Jourdain dipped her head. "We pay homage to the crown. We have no quarrel with you, nor do we wish to sow discord. But Dorne has its own traditions, its own rulers, and we would not see them overshadowed." Her dark eyes flicked to Sam, then back to Bran. Bran's unblinking gaze lingered a moment, as though he were sifting through time to see all possible outcomes. At length he said, "We can discuss the specifics of your autonomy within reason. But Dorne will remain under the crown's protection and laws. My hand will oversee the negotiations. There will be no bloodshed over this, not anymore. Do you accept these terms?" Ilaria's lips pressed together. She bowed once more, though Sam could sense her frustration. "We will negotiate in good faith, Your Grace." Bran turned to Sam. "See to it. Begin tomorrow if you can." Sam nodded, though he wondered how he would find the hours in the day for such a delicate matter. "Of course, Your Grace," he managed. "We'll arrange a meeting in the Solar." Ilaria and her retinue bowed and withdrew, their orange cloaks swishing in unison. Sam rubbed his eyes, exhaustion weighing on him. There was no real path but to talk, to reason, to find a compromise that would bring stability. That was his life now. When the last petitioners were seen and the sun had begun to slip behind the charred rooftops, Bran was wheeled away by Brienne to his private chambers, while Sam was left with a swirl of thoughts about Dorne, the city's finances, supply lines, and 1,000 other problems. At last, he stole a moment for himself, heading to the keep's modest kitchens. There, he found a few servants finishing the day's distribution of rations, watery bean stew in earthen bowls with scraps of bread that had gone stale. Sam accepted a portion and ate in a corner, ignoring the curious stares of the staff. The stew was thin but warm. He was tired enough to find it delicious. As he sipped the last spoonful, footsteps echoed in the hallway behind him. He glanced up to see Davos Seaworth. The older man offered a wan smile. "Mind if I join you?" Sam shook his head. Davos accepted a bowl of the same stew and sat beside him on a wooden bench. For a few minutes, they ate in comfortable silence. "You're doing well," Davos said at last, setting his bowl aside. "Better than I could. You have the right heart for this sort of thing." Sam tried not to show the relief that swept him. "I don't know if I'm doing enough." Davos shifted his shoulders. "No one's sure if they're doing enough, lad. War's left everything in ruin. But you do what you can." "Sometimes I think of Jon," Sam murmured, swirling the dregs of his stew. "Beyond the wall. I wonder what he's doing now. If he'll ever come back." Davos sighed, that gentle fatherly look crossing his face. "Jon gave us all a chance at peace. If we can keep it, that's the best tribute to him. And maybe one day he will cross that wall again. Stranger things have happened in this world." Sam nodded. Silence fell again, heavy with thoughts of exiled friends and uncertain futures. The torches along the hallway flickered, sending shadows stretching across the cold stone floor. A cook swept by, collecting empty bowls and ladles. Sam rose with a groan, feeling the stiffness in his limbs. "I have more reading to do tonight," he essayed. But maybe I'll get some rest if the gods are kind." Davos gave a small grin. "You've earned it, Hand." They parted ways, and Sam trudged back to his office, lighting a few candles to chase away the gloom. The stack of parchment looked taller than ever, and he set to it diligently, reading each petition, sorting them by urgency, drafting brief notes on potential solutions or next steps. His eyes ached, and the candle's flame wavered as the night grew older. A gentle wind slipped through the cracks in the walls, making him shiver. He thought of Gilly and little Sam, whom he had sent north to Horn Hill some weeks ago for their own safety. He prayed they were well. As the final candle dwindled and Sam's eyelids drooped, he set aside the scroll he had been reading and allowed the exhaustion to claim him. He fell asleep with ink-stained fingers, head resting upon a ledger that charted the cost of rebuilding the city's main thoroughfares. And so the first day's routine as Hand of the King concluded. In the morning, he would rise again to 1,000 new trials. The next day dawned, its light creeping through the cracks in the tower walls, landing on Sam's face. He awoke stiff and sore, his back aching from an uncomfortable sleep. A sense of renewed urgency throbbed in his chest the moment he remembered the negotiations with the Dornish delegates. He stretched, tidied himself as best he could, and took a swig of water from a nearby pitcher. The taste was warm and stale, but it soothed his dry throat. Before he could delve into the stack of work, there was a rap on the door. He opened it to find a steward bearing a folded letter. "A raven arrived this morning, my lord," the steward said. "From Horn Hill." A burst of warmth filled Sam's heart. "Thank you," he said hastily, taking the letter. He stepped back into his office and cracked the seal, scanning the words penned in a careful hand. It was from Gilly. She wrote that she and little Sam were safe, that the fields in the Reach were green again, and the harvest promised to be abundant. She wrote that the small folk were uncertain whether Sam would claim Horn Hill as its rightful lord. It was an inheritance he'd never expected to fall to him, but with his father and brother gone, the seat was vacant. The letter ended with a gentle wish for his safety, her love conveyed in each careful stroke of the quill. He set the letter aside, carefully smoothing its parchment, smiling softly. Then, steeling himself, he turned to the day's tasks. First came a short visit to the King's Solar, where he found Bran gazing out at the city below. Bran simply nodded at him, and Sam gave a brief update on the finances, the daily tasks, and the planned negotiations. Bran offered little in the way of direct instruction, merely affirming that Sam should do what he thought best. Not an hour later, Sam was in a small meeting chamber, circular with high, narrow windows that let in beams of bright light. The Dornish delegates arrived, their expressions poised. Ilaria Jourdain took her seat opposite Sam. A small retinue of scribes and advisors accompanied them. On Sam's side of the table, Davos Seaworth sat quietly, arms folded, while Bronn lounged in a chair behind them, looking vaguely bored. Brienne stood near the door, ensuring no one interrupted. Negotiations began politely enough, though Sam could sense the tension in Ilaria's voice. She pressed for near-complete autonomy, citing the history of Dorne resisting conquest. She made reference to the fact that the North had achieved such status, so it was only fair that Dorne receive similar terms. Sam countered that the North's independence was unique as Sansa was the king's sister and that the realm's unity was crucial for recovery after such devastating wars. The conversation ebbed and flowed, heated at times, calm at others. "And what of taxation?" Ilaria asked, arching a dark brow. "We are not keen to fill the coffers of King's Landing if we are to remain a token province at best." Sam took a breath, reminding himself to stay composed. "The realm is in dire need of funds to rebuild, my lady. The city stands half in ruins, and Dorne will need trade and alliance benefits as much as any region. The new roads we build, the new garrisons we raise, they protect all of us, including Dorne." She pressed her lips together. "We will not be burdened with the lion's share. No one region should be." Sam flicked his eyes toward Bronn, who had begun to pick at his fingernails with a small knife. "The crown is not imposing new taxes blindly. We only wish for each region to contribute fairly in proportion to their means for the good of the realm." Ilaria leaned back, exchanging a glance with one of her advisors, a wiry man with deep-set eyes. At length, she said, "And in return, we request that the crown respect our ancient laws and customs, that no interference shall be made in our internal governance. Furthermore, we would wish for a Dornish seat on the small council so that we may have a voice in the shaping of the realm." Sam felt a small surge of relief. A seat on the council was a request that suggested willingness to remain part of the kingdom. "A seat on the small council can be arranged," he said, ignoring Bronn's muttered scoff. "But the final appointments are made by the king's discretion in consultation with the Hand. We can propose it to his grace." Ilaria nodded slowly. "I believe that would be acceptable so long as the nominee is chosen by Dorne, subject to the king's approval." They continued talking for hours, hashing out details of trade, law, and protection. By midday, Sam was nearly hoarse, but he refused to yield. Eventually, they broke for a simple meal, bread, cheese, and watered wine. The negotiations resumed soon after, carrying on until dusk crept through the narrow windows. At last, Sam called an end to the day's discussions. "We've laid the groundwork," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Let's reconvene tomorrow to finalize the language of the agreement. I'll speak with the king about the council seat." Ilaria rose with regal grace. "We appreciate your candor, Lord Tarley. We will see you on the morrow." She and her retinue swept out in a swirl of orange cloaks. Sam sagged in his chair, rubbing his temples. "Seven hells," he muttered. Davos patted him on the shoulder. "I've seen worse arguments at the Stormlands feasts. You did fine." Bronn pushed himself to stand, tucking away his little knife. "At least they're not breathing fire or demanding half the realm. Could be worse." Brienne, who had remained standing near the door, stepped forward. They seemed earnest enough in their demands. "If the king can agree, this might pass without bloodshed." Sam nodded, feeling exhaustion creep through his bones. "Let's hope so." With that, they dispersed, and Sam went to deliver a summary of the talks to the king. As usual, Bran listened without much outward reaction, only offering Sam a mild carry-on and a vague smile, as though he already knew the shape of the outcome. Sam was halfway back to his office when he realized he had not eaten more than a nibble of bread all day. Yet he could not bring himself to go to the kitchens again. Instead, he collapsed into a chair, reading over a letter from Lord Royce of the Vale about some minor trade dispute. His mind drifted back to thoughts of Jon and how, not so long ago, they had fought side by side against the army of the dead. It all seemed like a strange dream now. As he finally dozed, nightmares of the dead army stalking the city made him jolt awake more than once. He tried to soothe himself by thinking of Gilly's letter, of little Sam, safe in the Reach's gentler climate. Still, the pang of missing them was acute. In the weeks that followed, Sam's life fell into a steady, if grueling, rhythm. Each morning brought more scrolls, more pleas, more demands for resources the crown did not have in abundance. Still, progress glimmered in small victories. Mason crews labored tirelessly, and the city's main thoroughfares were cleared of rubble. Bronn oversaw the distribution of building materials in a manner that, while occasionally suspect, moved things forward. Davos arranged for additional ships to ferry in supplies, forging alliances with coastal lords who were eager to rebuild their own shipping lanes. Brienne focused on reorganizing the City Watch into a less corrupt force, rooting out old loyalties to the Lannisters or the Targaryens, forging a new guard that truly served the city. All the while, Sam hammered out the Dornish agreement. After 3 separate negotiation sessions, a suitable compromise was reached. Dorne would recognize Bran's sovereignty, remain part of the kingdom, pay taxes proportionate to their population, and in return be granted considerable autonomy in local matters as well as a seat on the small council. The woman they proposed for that seat was Ilaria Jourdain herself. Sam brought the final arrangement to Bran, who approved it with a gracious nod. So a moon after the new reign had begun, a small ceremony was held in the throne's makeshift hall where Ilaria swore fealty on behalf of Dorne and Bran welcomed her to the council. The tension that had hovered over King's Landing eased somewhat. Word spread that the realm was trying to stitch itself back together. A new sense of cautious optimism took hold in the city streets. Sam roamed those streets often, sometimes in disguise, to see how the people truly fared. He wore a cloak over his official garb, letting the hood fall low. A few recognized him anyway, but none harassed him. Most were too busy to pay him any heed. He saw men rebuilding stables, women bartering for vegetables in small markets, children chasing each other amid the ruins, playing with old wooden swords. The city was alive, though battered. His responsibilities never let up. At every turn, new disputes arose, rival lords bickering over farmland, merchants squabbling over trade rights. Even some foreign envoys came bearing tidings from Essos, though the scars of Daenerys' campaign had left many of their ties in tatters. Sam found himself in near-constant correspondence with officials from Bravos and Pentos, forging a diplomatic path so the realm might open its ports without fear of retribution. The new king's stance on slavery was clear. It was never to return to Westeros in any form. Sam insisted upon that, and Bran had wholeheartedly agreed, even though some foreign merchants hinted at how profitable the slave trade could be. Sam found the thought appalling, remembering the stories of Daenerys freeing slaves across the Narrow Sea. They would not undo that progress now. Yet in the midst of these daily trials, Sam still felt that quiet longing to see Jon again, or even just to know what lay beyond the wall. Reports from the north were sporadic. Sansa, crowned queen in the north, was fortifying Winterfell and sending envoys to King's Landing to remain in friendly alliance. Arya Stark had sailed west, beyond the known maps, her fate a mystery. And Jon Snow was off with the wildlings, no longer a part of these daily concerns of governance, but never far from Sam's heart. Sometimes Sam would climb to the top of the highest tower in the Red Keep, what remained of it, and stare north, imagining the endless stretch of icy plains. He wondered if Jon was well, if Ghost ran at his side, if the scattered free folk still roamed with him. One windy day, as Sam stepped onto the tower's parapet, a gust nearly toppled him, but he held firm to the stone railing. Looking across the city's rooftops, he caught sight of what appeared to be a large horse caravan entering the gates. He peered closer, squinting in the afternoon light. The caravan's banners were too small for him to identify from that distance, but it stirred a glimmer of curiosity. Soon enough, the answer reached him in the form of a visitor. He had just descended from the tower and re-entered the corridor when a guard approached, announcing that a Lord Tyrion Lannister wished to see him. Sam's heart lurched. Tyrion had been absent these many weeks, traveling for reasons known only to him. Sam had begun to wonder if the former hand had any intention of returning. He made haste to the small audience chamber. There, Tyrion stood, clad in simple but well-made clothing of dark green and gold trim. He was thinner than before, new lines etched into his face, but the sharpness of his eyes was unchanged. A short beard covered his cheeks, and his silver-blonde hair had grown a bit, framing his face. When he saw Sam, he offered a crooked smile. "Lord Tarly," Tyrion greeted. "I see you've settled into your seat of power quite nicely." Sam tried to gauge his tone, but it was neither mocking nor insincere. "Tyrion," he said, "where have you been?" Tyrion shrugged. "Surveying the damage, traveling the roads, speaking to lords who are, let's say, less than pleased with the new order. We wouldn't want them to stir up trouble, would we? Someone has to ensure the realm remains, if not content, at least pacified." Sam nodded, leading him into the chamber. They sat across from each other at a small wooden table. A servant hovered in the corner, ready to bring wine, but Sam waved him off. He wanted no distractions. "We've been busy here, rebuilding," Sam said. "The king misses your counsel, though he doesn't exactly say it out loud." A flicker of regret passed over Tyrion's face. "I did not part on the best of terms. After the events that led to the Dragon Queen's downfall, I needed time away from that chair." He gestured vaguely toward the dais where the king usually sat, "But I always intended to return once I'd done what I set out to do." "And what was that?" Sam asked gently. Tyrion splayed his hands. "Ensuring that the families most affected by Daenerys's dragonfire had the means to recover. Selling off a few of my personal assets to raise some coin. Offering condolences where needed. I don't expect forgiveness, but a little coin can sometimes soothe anger." He paused, eyes flicking to Sam's face. "I also wanted to see if I could glean any news of the exiled Unsullied, or if any Targaryen loyalists still lingered in the shadows." Sam pursed his lips. He had wondered often about Grey Worm and the Unsullied who had sailed away toward Noth, Missandei's homeland. "Did you find anything?" "They're gone, as far as I can tell. Some Targaryen loyalists remain, but they're leaderless. No dragons, no queen. Scattered and harmless. I doubt we'll see them cause trouble, not now that the realm has begun to heal." Tyrion took a breath and settled back in the chair. "I'm here to see if I can help, Sam. This new age, can I still call you Sam?" Sam found himself smiling slightly. "You always have. And yes, I could use your help. There's more than enough to do, and you know the game better than anyone." "High praise," Tyrion said, arching an eyebrow. "I hope I can live up to it. Or at least drink my way through it while you handle the real work." Sam chuckled softly, though the fatigue in his bones made him wish for a moment's levity. "You'll find there's less drinking and whoring in this new order. We're short on coin, wine, and, well, pleasures. Too many mouths to feed. But we can always spare you a seat at the council table if you'd like." "I'm at your service, Lord Hand," Tyrion said, placing a hand over his heart in a theatrical gesture. "Now, where do we begin?" They spent the better part of the afternoon going over the city's situation, the distribution of resources, the various alliances Sam had brokered. Tyrion listened intently, occasionally interjecting with a question or a sardonic remark. By evening, Sam's voice was hoarse again, but he felt an unexpected lightness in his heart. Having Tyrion back in King's Landing might be the missing piece that allowed them to navigate the more intricate politics still looming on the horizon. A soft rap on the door ended their discussion. A steward entered, bowed, and announced that the king requested Sam's presence in his solar. Sam exchanged a glance with Tyrion, who inclined his head as if to say, "Go on." Sam rose and made his way upstairs. Bran was waiting in the solar, gaze lingering on the starry sky through the open window. The flicker of torchlight illuminated him. Sam noticed something akin to melancholy in the set of Bran's features. As Sam closed the door behind him, Bran turned his chair to face him. "You wanted to see me, Your Grace?" Sam asked quietly. Bran studied him for a long moment. "You're tired." Sam let out a soft laugh. "I won't deny that. I'm sorry the burden is so heavy. It had to be you, Sam, for you care about the people more than anyone." Bran's voice had a deep resonance to it, as though he channeled knowledge from beyond the present moment. "We're shaping a new realm, and you're building it on a foundation of compassion. That is rare." Sam felt a lump form in his throat. "I only hope I'm doing enough." "You are." Bran's eyes flickered, and he turned again to stare out at the night sky. "Someday we might see real peace in this realm. Wars fade into memory, and we stand on the brink of a new era where knowledge and reason guide us more than swords." He paused. "I read your historical treatises, Sam. The ones you started at the Citadel about the White Walkers and the Long Night. We must never forget what happened or how close we came to annihilation. Knowledge is our safeguard." Sam felt a surge of pride and humility. "I'll keep writing when I can." "Good. In the meantime, continue as you are. The city is beginning to thrive again. The lords and ladies are finding reasons to trust the crown. Even Dorne is satisfied for now." "There's still much to do," Sam began, but Bran held up a hand. "I know. You'll do it," Bran murmured. "Now go. Rest if you can." Sam bowed, then slipped out of the solar, mind whirling. That night, he returned to his chambers, wrote a quick note to Gilly to let her know how matters stood, and prayed to the Seven, though perhaps the old gods as well, that his work would not be in vain. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into a season. Summer's warmth took hold, driving away the last vestiges of the chill that had lingered from the Great War with the dead. The city's market squares filled with traveling merchants from all over Westeros. Birds sang in the battered gardens near the keep, and children's laughter echoed amid the once-ruined streets. It was not perfect, there was still crime and poverty, but the difference was palpable. The stench of fear that had once clung to every stone of King's Landing had lessened. People dared to smile. Sam's work expanded beyond the city. He began coordinating efforts to rebuild roads between the Crownlands and the Reach, ensuring the transport of grain and produce. He wrote letters to the Iron Islands, gently broaching the topic of bolstering trade routes, which Yara Greyjoy tentatively accepted. He visited lords in the Stormlands, forging a sense of unity that had been absent for years. It felt daunting to do so much in such a short span, but every success fueled his determination. There were thorns, of course. Lords who chafed at paying taxes to a city that had once burned them. Nobles who resented the new arrangement with Dorne or the independence of the North. Quiet mutterings that questioned whether King Bran, wheelchair-bound and often lost in visions, truly commanded any respect. Sam navigated these dangers carefully, calling upon Tyrion's cunning whenever subtlety was required. More than once, he and Tyrion traveled together to meet a wary lord on his own land, sharing wine, offering gestures of goodwill. If Tyrion's silver tongue faltered, Sam's earnestness often bridged the gap, winning trust inch by inch. One day, as Sam returned from a lengthy journey to the Westerlands to soothe discontent among the lesser Lannister bannermen, he was surprised to find Gilly and little Sam waiting for him in the Red Keep courtyard. She had come of her own accord, traveling under the protection of a small escort from Horn Hill, eager to see her husband again. The moment he saw her, Sam let out a cry of joy. She hurried toward him, skirts swirling around her ankles, and he threw his arms around her, hugging her tight. Little Sam, now a sturdy boy of 7 or so, clung to Sam's leg, grinning up at him. For that night, Sam felt a warm happiness that he had almost forgotten in the long toils of governance. He showed them to the newly refurbished wing of the keep, where they would have modest but safe quarters. That evening, they dined together in his office, laughing at how little Sam had tried to sword fight with a wooden stick, nearly tripping into a chicken coop. Gilly told him how the fields of Horn Hill were as green as ever, how she felt at home there. By candlelight, they spoke softly, Gilly resting her head on Sam's shoulder as he recounted the events of the past months. He found solace in her presence, in the simple fact that she believed in him. It gave him renewed strength to carry on. As the days passed, Gilly settled into the keep, helping where she could, assisting some of the scribes with reading and copying tasks. Little Sam roamed the safer parts of the courtyard, wide-eyed at the hustle and bustle of the capital. Sometimes Sam worried for their safety, but the city was far calmer than in the days of the Dragon Queen's invasion. Guards patrolled regularly, and Sam gave strict instructions that no harm was to befall his family. Brienne discreetly oversaw the guard rotations, ensuring Gilly's security. One evening, as Sam sat with Gilly in a quiet corner of the keep's gardens, now partly restored with fresh blooms, a young steward approached, breathless, delivering the news that a man from the north had arrived, seeking audience with the hand. Sam's heart leapt. Could it be John? Had he returned? The steward didn't have the name, only that the man wore black and came from beyond the neck. Sam excused himself from Gilly and hurried to the keep's main hall, heart pounding. He arrived to find not John, but a ranger of the Night's Watch named Dolorous Ed, a friend of Sam's from Castle Black. The older man looked weary, flecks of gray now showing in his hair. When he saw Sam, he managed a strained smile, though sadness lingered in his eyes. "Sam," Ed said, stepping forward. "Ed." Sam clasped his hands. "Are you well?" "And the watch?" Ed gave a curt nod. "We're surviving. Castle Black is near empty. Not many recruits these days. But there's always something stirring in the far north." Sam's pulse quickened. "News from John." Ed swallowed. "He came by the wall a month ago. He's still with the free folk, says they're making small settlements in the thawing tundra. He asked me to give you this." Ed reached into a pouch and pulled out a folded scrap of parchment. Sam took it, hands trembling. He opened it to see John's handwriting, terse and direct. "Sam, I hope you're well. The free folk have me going from camp to camp, settling disputes, helping them rebuild their lives. We find mammoth bones in the melting ice, remnants of the dead that once roamed. It's peaceful in its own way. I'm free here. Ghost is at my side. Sometimes I think of writing more, but words aren't my strength. I only wish you the best. You'll do more good for the realm than I ever did. Keep them safe. John." A lump rose in Sam's throat. He could almost picture John scribbling the note by a small campfire, the winds of the tundra biting at his cheeks. A pang of longing coursed through him, but also relief. John was alive, forging a new existence where perhaps he could find a measure of peace at last. He looked at Ed. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you for bringing this." Ed nodded, shifting on his feet. "I have other news, too, from the Shadow Tower. Some roamers were spotted, men and women who speak of raiding. Might be ex-bandits. We're keeping an eye on it. But if they come south of the wall, we might need help." Sam frowned. "I'll speak to the king, see if we can send supplies or reinforcements. The Night's Watch might be smaller, but we can't leave you defenseless." Ed gave him a grateful look. "Much appreciated. I'll stay a night or two, then head back." Sam insisted that Ed stay in comfortable quarters and have a decent meal. That night, Sam sat by candlelight again, reading John's note over and over, wondering what the free folks' new life was like, how they survived in the thawing wilderness. He recalled the times they had shared at Castle Black, the terror of the White Walkers, the relief of their final defeat. John deserved peace. He deserved, at least, a life free from the constant burden of the Iron Throne or the shifting loyalties of the realm. Sam hoped he found it. Seasons moved on, and under Sam's stewardship, King's Landing regained much of its old bustle, though shaped by a gentler order. New laws were passed, ensuring the distribution of essential goods, preventing the hoarding of grain. Disputes were handled through councils rather than by the sword. Children no longer cowered at the sound of approaching soldiers. The small council grew to include representatives from every region, forging new lines of communication. Tyrion's cunning, Davos's steady hand, Brienne's unwavering honor, and Illyria's Dornish perspective all played their parts. And above them all, Bran the Broken, king of the Six Kingdoms, maintained his quiet watch, guiding Sam with an almost ethereal calm. One day, in a subdued ceremony, Sam was presented with the official chain of office. It was smaller than the maester's chain he had once desired, lacking the ring links of different metals, but it was symbolic of his position. King Bran performed the ceremony in front of a gathering of lords and ladies, acknowledging that Samwell Tarly had proved himself more than worthy. Sam accepted with a bow, feeling the weight settle on his shoulders. That very night, he and Tyrion shared a cup of wine, reminiscing about the days when Sam had been but a timid steward at the wall. Tyrion teased him about how he had once trembled at the sight of a White Walker, but Sam teased back about how Tyrion had once been terrified by the prospect of marriage. They laughed, albeit with shadows of old pain flickering in their eyes. Still, not every corner of the realm was content. Some Stormland lords grumbled about the new taxes. A group of ex-Gold Cloaks attempted to stir rebellion in Flea Bottom, angered by the changes and the new leadership. Sam oversaw a careful response, ensuring the matter ended with minimal bloodshed. The men were captured, tried, and most were sentenced to labor rebuilding the city's walls rather than being executed outright. Brienne insisted that some measure of justice was still necessary, so a few ringleaders were sent to the wall to serve, though that was more an echo of old times than truly practical. Sam visited them before they left, explaining that he once wore black himself, that at the wall they might find purpose. Some spat at his feet, but others just nodded, resigned to their fate. In private moments, Sam questioned himself. Was he naive to offer leniency? Would it come back to haunt him? But each time he recalled the horrors of war, he knew he wanted to do better. John had believed in mercy. The realm needed it now more than ever. So Sam pressed on, trusting that compassion could yield a stronger peace than fear. Meanwhile, the Ravens carried news of continuing developments. Sansa Stark in the north ruled wisely, forging alliances with the mountain clans and rebuilding Winterfell's library. She wrote occasionally to Sam, praising his efforts, encouraging him to visit. Arya remained unheard from, though rumors suggested her ship had been seen in distant harbors west of the Sunset Sea. The North sent shipments of furs to King's Landing in exchange for southern fruit and cereals, a gentle trade that benefited both sides. Even Tormund Giantsbane wrote a letter to Sam once, though it was barely legible, boasting of great hunts beyond the wall. Time flowed like a winding river, and Sam found himself aging into his role. His once black hair gained a few strands of gray, and the lines around his eyes grew more pronounced. Gilly stood by him, learning to read and write more fluently, helping with accounts, and even assisting with charitable efforts in the city. Little Sam ran around the keep, forging friendships with other children of the court. The pang of missing John lessened, replaced by a warm acceptance that their paths had diverged for the sake of the realm. And so, under Sam Tarly's careful stewardship, King's Landing transformed. Not into a paradise. No city ever truly becomes that. But into a place where people's voices were heard, where refugees from war could find assistance, where knowledge was gathered and shared. The Citadel slowly rekindled ties with the Crown, sending maesters to help with new tasks. Libraries were rebuilt. Orphanages sprang up with the Crown's backing. The new age was far from perfect, but it carried a promise that the mistakes of the past need not dictate the future. On a bright summer morning, Sam awoke early, feeling an uncharacteristic anxiety twisting in his gut. He had dreamed of the old days at Castle Black, of the moment John had first given him a chance to prove himself, of the dreadful night they had learned the walkers were real. Waking from such dreams always left Sam breathless and introspective. He rose from bed, careful not to disturb Gilly, and dressed in a simple tunic. It was still early. The first rays of sunlight glimmered over the Red Keep's walls. He decided to walk the city streets before the day's duties consumed him. With a guard discreetly following at a distance, Sam made his way through the gate that led into the city proper. The cobblestones were slick with morning dew, and a few vendors were already setting up stalls. Farmers from the Riverlands were unloading crates of fruit, while fishermen hawked their catch from the previous night. The smell of bread baking drifted from a nearby shop, mingling with the sea breeze. Sam strolled, greeting passers-by politely, though most did not recognize him or notice his pin of office in the early light. He wandered toward Flea Bottom, remembering how it had once been a hive of desperation, a place where the city's poorest suffered without hope. It was still poor, still crowded, but something had shifted. A small group of volunteers was ladling out porridge from a communal pot for children. Nearby, a newly whitewashed building bore a crude sign that read "Free School," where a kindly old maester taught a handful of ragged children their letters. Sam paused at the doorway, peering in. The children recited the alphabet in unison, their voices echoing in the cramped room. The old maester turned, caught Sam's eye, and gave him a small nod of recognition. Sam nodded back, his heart swelling with quiet pride. He moved on, continuing his slow walk. The city had not magically become a utopia overnight, but changes were visible in every corner. Masons reinforced old houses, ensuring they wouldn't topple in the next storm. Guards patrolled regularly but politely, no longer extorting bribes. In a small square, a statue had been raised, a modest monument to those who had fallen in the long night, hammered from leftover scraps of steel. It showed a cloaked figure holding a lantern against the darkness with the sigil of the Night's Watch etched on its base. Sam paused, reading the words carved into the stone, "For the dawn we stood." The memory of the battle with the dead rushed back to him. He closed his eyes, offering a silent prayer for all the lost souls. Then he turned away, resuming his walk. There was so much left to do, but at least they had come this far. When the sun fully broke over the city, Sam returned to the Red Keep and stepped into his office, meeting the daily barrage of scrolls and messages. One was from Tyrion, who had gone to the Reach to broker a new grain shipment. Another was from Bronn, complaining that some lords in the Westerlands were late in paying taxes. Sam sighed and read them all, drafting his replies. Then, as was his habit, he consulted with the king. Bran, however, was not in the throne hall. A guard informed Sam that the king had gone to the Godwood. Curious, Sam followed, heading through the keep's corridors until he emerged into the small godwood that had somehow endured the fires. Ancient trees stood stoically among new saplings. A single weirwood sapling had been planted at the center by Sansa's arrangement, its bark still youthful, face uncarved. Bran sat in his chair beside it, eyes half closed, the breeze rustling his cloak. Sam approached quietly, not wanting to disturb the king's reverie. After a time, Bran opened his eyes. "Samwell," he said softly. "You knew I was coming." Sam managed a small laugh, recalling Bran's uncanny knowledge. Bran's lips curved into a faint smile. "Yes, I wanted to speak with you. Today is an anniversary of the day Jon Snow rode north with the Free Folk. Do you remember?" Sam's heart clenched. He had lost track of the exact date in the flurry of daily tasks, but of course Bran would recall. "Ah yes, your grace. It's been years." Bran looked at the budding leaves overhead, sunlight dancing through them. "Time moves strangely. The realm is more stable now. People are rebuilding, forging a new future. We've come a long way from the wars that ravaged these lands." Sam nodded. "Yes, we have." Bran turned his gaze upon him, and Sam felt the weight of it like a tangible thing. "You've done the realm a great service as hand," Bran said. "I could not have led it without you. I can see many paths, past, present, and future. But only some are worth walking and only a few lead to peace. You guided us along one of those." Sam swallowed, touched by the sincerity in the king's voice. "I only did what I thought was right." Bran raised a hand, gesturing for Sam to lean closer. Sam knelt beside Bran's chair. "The realm still needs a hand, a wise counselor," Bran continued. "But you have your own life, your own family. If ever you wish to step aside, I will not hold you here in chains. You may go to Hornhill, or the Citadel, or beyond. Live as you choose." Sam stared at the weirwood sapling, feeling a swirl of emotions. Part of him missed the life he had once imagined, becoming a maester, delving into books, raising a family in a peaceful corner of the world. But would the realm falter if he left? Could someone else do better? He thought of Jon's note, how Jon had found a sense of belonging beyond the wall. Did Sam truly belong here in the capital forever? "Your Grace," Sam said softly, "I appreciate that more than I can say. But for now, I'm not ready to abandon this work. There's so much still to do. Perhaps one day, but not yet." Bran's eyes glimmered with understanding. "Very well. You'll know when the time is right." Sam bowed his head in acknowledgement. They sat in silence for a time, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the city beyond the Godwood walls. Then Sam rose, knowing the day's tasks beckoned. He felt lighter, somehow. The choice was his, and though he remained in King's Landing, he did so freely out of a true sense of duty and hope. That evening, Sam found Gilly and Little Sam walking the gardens. Little Sam was chattering about wanting to see the north, to ride a horse across the frozen lakes. Gilly gave Sam a smile when she saw him. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. Together, they strolled beneath the torchlit arches, breathing in the scent of summer roses that had recently been planted. He thought of the realm broken but mending, scarred but healing. He thought of the wall and the free folk, forging a new life. He thought of Sansa in the north, Jon beyond it, Arya across uncharted seas, Tyrion forging alliances, Brienne training new recruits for the City Watch, Davos shipping goods to every corner of the kingdom. He pictured the swirl of cogs in motion, every piece playing its part, every person striving to rise above the tragedies that had nearly drowned them all. He gazed at Gilly and Little Sam, his family, and felt a wave of gratitude. Not so long ago, he had been a frightened boy, cowering under his father's disapproval, exiled to the wall. Then he had become a brother of the Night's Watch, uncertain but determined to survive. He had fought the dead, uncovered truths in old scrolls, and stood against unspeakable terrors. He had lost friends, found love, and discovered a newfound sense of purpose. Now, improbably, he was the hand of the king, shaping the destiny of a realm that had nearly torn itself apart. They circled the garden path, a hush falling around them as night deepened. A thin crescent moon hung in the sky, pale against the black. The city's lights stretched below, lamps and torches dotting the streets, flickering like countless stars on the earth. From this vantage, Sam saw the sprawl of King's Landing as a tapestry of renewed hope and lingering sorrow woven together. Gilly leaned her head on Sam's shoulder, and Little Sam took his hand. Sam smiled at them both. A gentle breeze teased the torches, causing the shadows to dance along the red stone walls. The hush of night settled over them as the wheel of time turned another notch. This was the age they had carved out of chaos, an age shaped by heartbreak and sacrifice, but also by love and unity. And in that quiet moment, Sam felt certain that what they had built, this fragile piece, this attempt at forging a fairer realm, was worth every effort. He closed his eyes, inhaled the summer air, and silently thanked whatever gods watched over them for allowing him to be here, to serve, to heal the wounds of war. He was Samwell Tarly, once a craven, now a leader, and he would see this new era through. If someday he ventured south to Horn Hill or returned to the Citadel to write the realm's new history, he would do so knowing he had given his all to bring the kingdoms back from the brink. And that, he thought, was a story worth telling. He walked on, hand in hand with Gilly and little Sam, into the promise of another dawn. The city's lights glimmered behind them, and the Tower of the Hand, battered but standing, loomed above like a silent guardian. The future held countless challenges yet, but for now they had carved out hope in the ashes. As the new hand of the king, Sam would devote every waking breath to seeing that hope kindled into a lasting flame, so that all the realm could stand in the light. In the distance, from the harbor, a single horn sounded, a low, sonorous note echoing across the water and through the alleys. It was not the horn of war this time, but the horn of arrival, heralding another ship that brought goods, travelers, perhaps new stories. Life continued, unstoppable, and Sam Tarly would meet it head-on, with a quill in one hand and compassion in his heart, forging a tomorrow that all of Westeros could share. Sam rose the next morning with the remnants of moonlight still clinging to the sky. Gilly stirred beside him, and he smiled softly, reflecting on the wonder that they were here at all, within the Red Keep, in quarters more finely furnished than any space he had ever called his own. The subtle weight of responsibility tugged at him before he even set his feet on the ground. He dressed quietly in the pale hush of dawn, kissed Gilly's cheek, and stole away to begin a day that would feel both impossibly long and all too brief. It was no small thing to hold the reins of power, however lightly, and Sam could feel the 1,000 little threads of the realm tangled around him, each one bearing its own weight. The city had grown calmer, yes, but calm did not mean idle. Each day, merchants resumed old trades, new guilds formed, lords negotiated their share of coin or justice, and foreigners drifted in with all manner of wares. Coupled with the slow, uncertain changes in the rest of Westeros, the entire realm felt like a living map in flux, edges quivering, borders shifting. Everyone looked to King Bran, and, by necessity, to Sam the Hand for direction. Some days, Sam saw only pitfalls and snares in that swirling tapestry. On better days, he saw promise. Stepping into his office, he noted the hour by the golden hue breaking across the towers outside. A steward had already laid out freshly inked quills and a few cups of water for mixing pigments, along with neat stacks of parchment. One sheaf contained the day's urgent matters, a curation of trade proposals, disputes, letters from lords, and updates from the small council. Sam ran a careful eye over them, sorting them in order of priority. A conflict in the Stormlands about disputed farmland. A request from a Bravosi trade consortium. A petition from the local stonemasons guild about wages. Another letter from House Redwine regarding shipping fees. And so on. He was just immersing himself in the details of the farmland dispute. Apparently 2 houses who claimed a certain patch of orchard had gotten so heated that fists had flown, when a knock rapped on the door. He looked up to see Podrick Payne peering in. "My lord," Podrick said, bobbing an awkward bow. "Ser Brienne sends her regards. She's asked me to tell you that Lord Davos has returned from the Stepstones with news." Sam's brows rose in surprise. "The Stepstones? But I thought he sailed only as far as Tarth and the eastern coast." Podrick straightened. He got word of pirate raids near the Gullet, so he went further south to see what he could learn. He arrived last night. He's with the king now. Sam thanked Podrick and quickly collected the farmland dispute letters. If Davos had traveled to the Stepstones, something significant might be afoot. Pirates were always a concern, but especially now, with the realm's finances so precarious. Any disruption to trade routes could cripple them. He hurried through corridors slowly being restored, their walls newly plastered, the old Targaryen sigils scrubbed off or charred away. The tapestries he passed were simpler than those of old. Images of ravens, trees, and rivers. Attempts to celebrate Bran's new era without the menacing presence of dragons or lions or stags. The hint of fresh paint mixed with dust tickled Sam's nose. At last, he reached the smaller solar where Bran often preferred to hold private audiences. The door was open, revealing a modest table and a broad window letting in morning light. Bran was within, seated in his wheeled chair, while Davos stood across from him, hands clasped behind his back. A map of the southern seas lay unrolled on the table, weighted by small stones to keep the corners from curling. Brienne stood to one side in her plain but polished armor, and Tyrion lounged in a chair on the other side, sipping water from a wooden cup. Davos turned as Sam entered. "Ah, there you are, Sam," he said in a voice that carried a tinge of exhaustion. "I've just been telling His Grace about what we found in the gullet." Sam approached, noting Davos's wind-chapped face and the lines of fatigue around his eyes. "I'm glad you're safe. What did you discover?" Davos tapped the map with 2 fingers. "Pirates, smugglers, and all the usual riffraff that skulk around these waters. But they're bolder than they've been in years. We saw 6 ships harassing merchant vessels that sailed to Duskendale and Maidenpool. Some fly no banner, others seem to take advantage of chaos in Lys and Tyrosh. They're picking off small ships laden with grain or cloth. The result is fewer merchants willing to risk that route and less trade coming into the Crownlands." Sam frowned, already imagining the consequences. The city depended on a steady flow of goods by sea, especially after the scouring it suffered during the war. "Any sense of a unifying leader behind these raids?" he asked. Davos shrugged. "Hard to say. They might simply be banding together because the local powers can't chase them off. But if we leave them be, they'll become an entrenched threat." Tyrion cleared his throat. "Which means we need to respond quickly. In the days of King Robert or even Joffrey, the crown would have dispatched the royal fleet, or a good portion of it, to deal with the pirates. But our royal fleet is no longer so royal. We've lost ships to war, to Daenerys' invasion, to scuttling, to everything else." Davos nodded. "We have a handful of newly built galleys, but that's it. We'll need to commission more if we're to make a statement. But building ships takes time, wood, coin, and skilled labor. And we need coin for the city's repairs too." Bran spoke softly, his eyes drifting over the map. "We cannot allow a threat to fester. People must know they are safe to trade. If they lose faith in the seas, the crown will suffer along with every merchant and port." "Hand, what do you propose?" Sam drew a slow breath. "We could hire sails or privateers to guard the shipping lanes. It's less expensive initially than building a full royal fleet. If we can strike a deal with certain, reputable captains, they can keep the pirates at bay. But the question is cost and trust. Sometimes privateers become pirates themselves if the crown can't pay them promptly." Tyrion sipped from his cup. "In my experience, if you hire a wolf to catch a wolf, you need to keep it well fed." Davos inclined his head. "Another option is to ask the lords of the Narrow Sea, House Valerion, House Bar Emmon, Celtigar, to provide ships, but we'll owe them. And many are still recovering from the wars." Bran's expression revealed little. "We need the shipping lanes secure." Sam turned it over in his mind. "If we promise favorable trade concessions for local lords who help supply ships or men, that might bring them to heel. We can also request assistance from the Iron Islands. Yara Greyjoy might be persuaded to send a few longships, especially if we sweeten the deal. She's no friend to slavers or pirates. She's not sworn to our rule the way the other lords are, but she might still see value in it. Every new alliance keeps the realm safer." Tyrion offered a mirthless chuckle. "Relying on Greyjoy ships to fight pirates in the gullet? There's a certain irony to that. But perhaps it's feasible." Davos let out a weary sigh. "I'll make the attempt if that's what His Grace desires. I can sail to Pike again and lay out our request." Bran's eyes seemed far away, but he nodded. "Yes. Speak to Yara Greyjoy. Sam, coordinate with the Master of Coin, Bronn, and see what we can spare for privateers. I dislike it, but we must keep the seas safe." Sam made a mental note of it. "We'll do what's necessary, Your Grace." Bran let out a measured breath. "Thank you, Lord Davos. You've done well to bring this news." Davos bowed slightly. "I'll rest a day or two, then head for Pike. I'll gather volunteers for the journey." Tyrion raised his cup in a small salute. "And maybe we can lighten the blow by reminding Yara we never took punitive measures for that little rebellion she tried to stoke. Diplomacy often rests on the memory of old debts." Davos sighed again. "One more negotiation, then." He gave a wry smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Bran shifted his gaze to Sam as though to confirm there was nothing more to add. Sam shook his head. The matter of pirates was enough for now. So they parted ways, Davos to find rest, Tyrion to confer with Bronn about funds, and Sam to prepare letters to houses Celtigar and Valerion requesting immediate cooperation. Brienne lingered with Bran, no doubt to ensure he had everything he needed for the day's next appointment. Sam hurried back toward his tower, passing groups of servants who bobbed curtsies or bows. He felt no sense of personal grandeur at their deference, only the same mild embarrassment that always accompanied the knowledge that he, Samwell Tarly, was considered the second most powerful man in the Six Kingdoms. It still felt strange, like wearing armor 2 sizes too large. He forced himself to focus on the practical tasks. Settled behind his desk, he composed a careful missive to Lord Valerion. Lord Valerion of Driftmark, I trust this letter finds you in good health. Recent disturbances near the Gullet have endangered trade vessels bringing much-needed goods into King's Landing. As you are well aware, the realm depends on safe and secure waters. On and on he wrote, explaining the threat, urging the Lord to provide ships if possible, promising favorable tariffs on Valerion wine and any future spoils of legitimate commerce. Then another letter to House Celtigar, employing the same courtesy but adjusting the tone slightly to account for their pride in being old Valyrian blood. When he was done, he sealed them both. A steward would dispatch them by Raven. After that came the matter of privateer captains. Sam had a short list of seafaring men and women rumored to be both competent and halfway trustworthy. He would need to run those names by Bronn and Tyrion. He had scarcely taken a moment to rub his weary eyes when another knock sounded. This time it was Gilly peeking around the doorframe with a gentle smile. Little Sam darted in behind her, face bright. Am I bothering you? Gilly asked softly. I can come back. Sam shook his head, motioning them in. No, please. You're always welcome. Gilly slipped inside, and little Sam was at his side in an instant, rattling off excitement about a new yard dog he had seen in the stables, how it was bigger than any dog in Horn Hill, with floppy ears and a keen nose. Sam nodded and smiled, letting the boys' chatter soothe him. Gilly rested a hand on Sam's shoulder, glancing at the scattering of parchments on the desk. You look tired, she murmured. I am. But I think that's a permanent condition, Sam said with a sheepish grin. Just dealing with pirates now. He gave a quick summary of the situation. Gilly's eyes widened slightly at the mention of sea raiders. She had never been comfortable with such talk, but she listened intently. What will the king do? She asked. Likely send emissaries and privateers, possibly build more ships. It's a lot of coin we don't really have to spare, but we can't ignore it. Sam gave a helpless shrug. All of these problems are woven together. If we don't keep the sea lanes open, we starve. If we overspend, we can't rebuild the city. It's like balancing a scale that's always tipping. Gilly's hand squeezed his shoulder, a simple gesture of support. Maybe once you solve this, you can come with me and little Sam to the orchard near the castle wall. They say it's blooming white flowers now. It might do you good to see it. Sam hesitated. He could easily lose himself in these parchments until nightfall. But Gilly's invitation stirred an unexpected longing for fresh air. I'll try, he promised. As soon as I finish drafting a note for Bronn about privateer contracts. She nodded, a smile flickering across her lips. We'll wait for you near the orchard gate at midday. If you can't come, I'll understand, but try. Little Sam tugged at Sam's sleeve. Come on, father. You always say you will, and then you're busy. Sam's heart ached at the boy's earnestness. I will, I promise, he said. They left him to his work, and Sam resolved that no matter how pressing things seemed, he owed his family a glimpse of attention. Perhaps, if he delegated properly, he could spare a short while in the orchard. That thought buoyed him as he turned back to the next round of documents. He penned the note to Bronn, carefully detailing the approximate cost of privateer services, the time frame, the risk of default if the crown could not pay. These were tedious but necessary considerations. When the bells of midday tolled faintly from the city's sept, Sam stood with a determined sigh, smoothing down his tunic and pushing in his chair. Outside, a steward approached with an urgent expression, possibly wanting some signature or answer, but Sam forestalled him. I have to see someone, he said. I'll be back soon. The orchard gate was a small side entrance leading to a half-wild patch of greenery that had survived the fires partly because it was shielded by stone outbuildings. Local gardeners had taken to pruning it, planting fresh saplings and coaxing old trees back to health. When Sam arrived, Gilly and little Sam were waiting, sitting on a low stone wall. The orchard was indeed in bloom, delicate white petals shimmering in the warm sunlight. The breeze carried a gentle perfume, so unlike the usual stink of the city. Gilly's face lit up when she saw him, as though she hadn't quite believed he would come. Sam managed a breathless smile. "Sorry if I'm late," he said. She shook her head. "I'm glad you made it." Little Sam hopped off the wall and bounded toward him. "Look!" he cried, pointing at a fallen cluster of petals swirling in the breeze. Sam took Gilly's hand, and together they strolled through the orchard, stepping carefully around the blooming trees. It was a small slice of peace. The city's noise dwindled, replaced by birdsong and the rustling of leaves. For a few precious moments, Sam let the demands of the crown slip from his mind. He listened to Gilly describe how the orchard might bear fruit in a year or two, how the gardeners had said these blossoms would yield small, tart apples. Little Sam scrambled up a low branch and giggled at a pair of sparrows, who fluttered away. Sam felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the sun. They found a small bench near the orchard's far edge, an old seat that might once have belonged to a Targaryen princess, half reclaimed by vines. Gilly brushed away the leaves, and they sat. She leaned against Sam, resting her head on his shoulder. Little Sam busied himself chasing insects through the grass. For a time, Sam simply breathed. He realized how shallow his breaths tended to be when he was buried in parchment, how his shoulders never quite relaxed. Here, in the orchard, he could sense his heartbeat slowing, his mind easing. Gilly wrapped an arm around his and murmured, "I wish you had more moments like this." "I do too," Sam said softly, "but I worry if I don't keep it, everything could unravel. The realm is so fragile." Gilly pressed closer. "You've done so much already. Let someone else handle a small thing now and then." Sam hesitated but eventually nodded. "I'm trying. I really am. I've been delegating more to Tyrion and Bronn and Ilaria." Indeed, Ilaria Jordain of Dorne had proven adept at smoothing over certain negotiations that Sam found tricky. "Still, I feel guilty letting anything slip away from my attention. Bran trusts me." Jon, he trailed off, recalling the letter Jon had sent, how Jon believed Sam would do more good for Westeros than he ever had. Sam wasn't sure that was true. Jon had saved them all more times than Sam could count, but it weighed on him like a vow. "Jon's proud of you, wherever he is," Gilly said, guessing his thoughts. She reached up, brushing aside a stray curl of Sam's hair. "I think you're allowed a little rest. We all are." Sam let himself relax into her touch, letting the orchard's gentle hush cradle them. Little Sam wandered back, panting from his exertions, and flopped onto the bench, setting his head in Gilly's lap. She stroked his hair, smiling. The sun felt warm on Sam's face, and he briefly shut his eyes, forgetting for one blissful minute that he was the hand, forgetting the swirl of responsibilities. All too soon, he heard distant footfalls and the clank of metal. Sam opened his eyes. Podrick Payne, once again, approached with an apologetic look. "I'm sorry, my lord," Podrick said. "Lord Tyrion sent me to fetch you. There's a matter of some urgency in the throne room." Gilly's hand on Sam's arm tightened momentarily, but she said nothing. Sam sighed, nodded to Podrick, and stood. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Gilly, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "Duty calls." She nodded, managing a small smile. "I know. Go on." Little Sam groaned, "But you just got here." Sam rested a hand on the boy's shoulder, murmuring an apology. Then, with one last backward glance at the orchard's tranquility, he followed Podrick out. On the short walk back, Sam's mind shifted from father and husband to Hand of the King, the orchard's quiet replaced by the dull roar of tension in his chest. Podrick led him not to the throne room that still bore scorch marks, but rather to the large courtyard where, at the king's preference, official gatherings often took place under the open sky. The dais was set up there, complete with a wooden chair for Bran. A small cluster of men stood before it, several bannermen from the Stormlands by the look of their crests, plus a handful of city officials and Tyrion off to one side, arms folded. Brienne and a cadre of guards formed a ring around the group, ensuring order. Bran himself sat in his chair at the center with that inscrutable calm in his eyes. As Sam arrived, he heard raised voices. One of the Storm Lords, a tall man with a blotchy complexion, was gesturing angrily at Tyrion. "I don't care about the crown's coffers. My fields have been looted again and again by those brigands, and no one lifts a finger." Tyrion gave a short sigh. "That's not so. We've sent the city watch to patrol the Rosby Road. We've dispatched knights from They're too few, too late," the Stormlord barked. He turned to Bran. "Your Grace, I demand immediate restitution, or I'll take it from the hides of those who robbed me." Sam came closer, heart sinking. Another bloody local feud. He stepped up to the dais, bowed to Bran, and turned to the Storm Lord with as much calm as he could muster. "My lord, I'm Samwell Tarly, Hand of the King. Please, let's clarify the matter. Who exactly has been looting your lands?" The Storm Lord, breathing heavily, looked Sam up and down. He recognized the hand's pin and gave a shallow bow of respect. "House Fell's men. They claim they're collecting old debts because my father took some farmland from them after Robert's rebellion. It's nonsense. That land was granted to my house fair and square. Yet they come in the night, steal livestock, set fire to a barn, terrorize my tenants. And I get no redress from the Crown's officials." Sam nodded slowly, trying to recall the complicated border disputes in the Stormlands. Indeed, House Fell and House Swigert, assuming this was Lord Swigert, had bickered for generations over a tract of land near the Windwater. "We've heard rumors of unrest," Sam said gently, "but I wasn't aware it had escalated to open looting. Why hasn't House Fell come to us with a counterclaim?" Lord Swigert snorted. "Because they're lawless bandits, or worse. I want justice, my Lord Hand. Or you'll have war in the Stormlands, mark my words. My men will not stand idly by while House Fell violates our lands." Tyrion stepped forward, voice measured. "And I reminded you, Lord Swigert, that the Crown does not condone vigilante warfare. If you strike at House Fell without due process, you will be the one committing treason. But we will investigate your complaint seriously." Swigert looked as if he wanted to spit. "Investigate quickly, or there'll be blood." Brienne's gaze flicked to Sam, as though suggesting a swift intervention. Sam let out a breath, choosing his words carefully. "Lord Swigert, you have His Grace's assurance that we will examine your claim at once. We'll summon House Fell to present their side. In the meantime, you are to stand down. Send the Crown a list of damages and we will see that restitution is made if your claim is proven. If you cannot prove wrongdoing, then any act of vengeance on your part will be met with the Crown's punishment. Do you understand?" The Storm Lord ground his teeth, but after a moment he bowed stiffly. "Yes, Lord Hand." Bran inclined his head, his eyes distant but firm. "We do not want war in the Stormlands. You will have our judgment within a fortnight." A hush settled. Swigert straightened, glancing from Bran to Sam, then to Tyrion, before stepping back. Sam gestured to one of the scribes to take down his statement in detail. Then the Storm Lord was escorted away by guards, presumably to finalize his complaint in writing. Once the tension eased, Tyrion rubbed a hand across his forehead. "They never make it easy," Tyrion muttered. "The Stormlands have been rife with grudges for centuries. One spark and the entire region might erupt." Sam exhaled slowly. "We'll need to speak to House Fell right away. If they're behind these raids, they might try to spin a story of their own. Perhaps we can mediate. The Stormlands have already endured enough bloodshed." Bran murmured, "The old ways die slowly. Even with a new age upon us, men cling to feuds." "See to it, Sam." Sam nodded. Another crisis to add to the growing list: pirates in the Gullet, orchard disputes in the Crownlands, now border skirmishes in the Stormlands. At least the capital remained mostly calm. He reminded himself that such was the nature of the realm, always multiple fires to put out. Bran retired then, and Brienne accompanied him, but Sam and Tyrion lingered in the courtyard, leaning close to confer in hushed tones. "We'll have to call House Fell to King's Landing," Sam said. "We can't just rely on Raven messages. We need them here, face to face, so we can judge who's telling the truth." Tyrion nodded. "Agreed. But be careful, Swigert could be exaggerating. He has a reputation for poor harvests and might be using a border conflict to mask his own failures. On the other hand, House Fell might indeed be stirring trouble for old grudges. Stormlords can be proud. You might want to request the presence of any other local lords who can testify." "I'll send out the summons tonight," Sam decided. "We'll gather them in a fortnight. If we handle this well, it might show the rest of Westeros that the Crown's justice is effective." Tyrion's lips curved into a half-smile. "A tall order, but maybe so. Now, about those privateers, Bronn is with the Master of Ships reviewing your proposals. He wants to see you soon to discuss the cost." "Bloody expensive," were his exact words. Sam let out a small groan. "Of course. Let's go see him. Then I'll get to the Stormlands problem." They left the courtyard, weaving through the keep's corridors until they reached an airy hall that had once been part of the library wing, now converted into a space for official treasury matters. Bronn, recently styled Lord of Highgarden and Master of Coin, was seated at a long table strewn with ledgers and coins of varying denominations. His doublet bore faint stains that suggested he'd spilled wine at some point, and a half-eaten piece of bread lay on a plate near his elbow. When he spotted Sam and Tyrion, He waved them over with a slightly mocking flourish. Well, if it isn't my favorite pair of troublemakers. Tyrion smirked. Bronn, you look comfortable enough in your new domain. Bronn snorted. Comfortable? We're hemorrhaging gold on city repairs, guard salaries, the Blackwater port reconstruction, not to mention the coin your friend the Hand wants for privateers. If that's your idea of comfortable, I'd hate to see miserable. Sam approached, setting a hand on one of the ledgers. I understand it's costly, but the realm can't afford to have pirates choke off trade. If we don't address it, the city's food supply will dwindle, and we'll lose more coin in the long run. Bronn looked unimpressed. Sure, I'm not disagreeing, but you're asking for thousands of gold dragons to pay these captains up front. They'll want half their fee now, half later. And if we don't pony up, they'll raid on their own account or run off. We're barely scraping enough gold as is. The lords who pledged coin after the council are behind on their payments. King's Landing can't keep afloat without steady tax flows. Tyrion patted Bronn's shoulder. You're the master of coin. I'm sure you'll think of something. Perhaps we can shift some funds from the Summerhall restoration. That's not exactly urgent. Summerhall is a ruin. No one lives there, and it's more symbolic than anything. Bronn scratched his stubble. Already did that, and from a few other places as well. We might still come up short. If we do, we'll need a loan from the Iron Bank again, or else raise taxes on the city. Neither option is great. Sam felt a familiar heaviness in his gut. He remembered how precarious it had been to secure basic funds after the wars. We'll talk to the lords who are behind on payments. Remind them of their obligations. Maybe we can broker smaller deals with each privateer, rather than trying to hire them all at once. As soon as we get more taxes in or open up some new trade, we can expand. We just need enough coverage in the gullet for the moment. Bronn grumbled. All right, we can try, but I'll have to keep watch on them closely. Those cutthroats are as slippery as eels. If we pay them late or if they see fatter prizes elsewhere, they'll turn on us faster than you can blink. Sam nodded. Yes, I know. That's the risk. But what else can we do? Our own navy is too small. Bronn shrugged. Fine, but don't come whining to me when one of those so-called privateers sets your precious library ships on fire. I'll do what I can to watch them. Tyrion's gaze flicked to Sam, silently acknowledging the precarious nature of all these compromises. Sam thanked Bronn and promised to review the final contract drafts within a day. As he and Tyrion left the makeshift treasury hall, Sam felt the weight of yet another uncertain gambit piling onto his shoulders. The city was not starved for trouble, that was sure. They parted ways, Tyrion heading off to speak to a group of merchants about new trade deals and Sam returning to his office to pen the official summons for Housefell. Already, the day was slipping by and he had a growing stack of tasks. He paused to remember that moment in the orchard, how simple and bright it had been. The memory granted him a brief surge of calm before he dove back into official business. Night fell over King's Landing, washing the city in a warm twilight. Sam found himself still poring over papers, a single candle flickering. Now and again, he rubbed his eyes, exhaustion creeping in. He thought of returning to Gilly to share in a supper and read with her and little Sam before bed. But not yet. One last letter, one last revision. A soft knock broke his concentration. Come in, Sam said, expecting another messenger. To his surprise, it was Queen Sansa's envoy from the north, a wiry man named Ronald Poole, clad in a heavy wool cloak despite the southern heat. He bowed politely. Lord Hand, Poole said, stepping in. I apologize for the late hour, but I bear a letter from Queen Sansa. She asked that I give it to you personally. Sam straightened, gesturing for him to approach. You're always welcome, Master Poole. How fares the north? Poole managed a flicker of a smile. Cold as always, though the summers are milder now since the long night ended. The roads are better. The north prospers under her reign. Sam took the parchment bearing Sansa's Starkwolf seal and broke it open. He read, Lord Samwell, I hope this finds you in good health. The north remains strong, though we have our own share of troubles, restless clans, wild storms, the usual. I write to seek your advice on a matter that has vexed me. We have received envoys from the free folk at the wall requesting trade of certain necessities in exchange for pelts and ivory. While I am inclined to help, some of my bannermen fear forging ties with the wildlings will undermine traditional northern ways. I do not share their fear, but I need a persuasive approach. You know these people well from your days at the wall, and you also know how to navigate uncertain alliances. Any counsel you can give would be welcome. Furthermore, I wish to thank you for your service to the realm and to my brother, King Bran. He speaks highly of your dedication. Perhaps, if the snows do not bar the roads, you might visit Winterfell again. We would be honored to host you, Gilly, and your son, your friend, Sansa Stark, Queen in the North. Sam felt a rush of warmth at the letter's tone, touched that she spoke so openly. He could almost see her face in his mind's eye, cool and composed, yet with a quiet resolve beneath. He set the parchment down, mulling over how best to advise her. Trading with the free folk had been Jon's dream, a union of peoples once separated by an ancient wall. Now that the White Walkers were gone, that separation felt unnecessary. But old prejudices lingered in the north. He turned to Poole. Tell her Grace that I'll craft a reply by morning. She can expect it soon. And please, if you need anything, let the stewards know. Poole bowed. Thank you, Lord Hand. I'll await your letter. Once the envoy left, Sam stared at the candle flame, thinking. Helping the free folk was not just a matter of trade, it was a matter of bridging a gap that had lasted for thousands of years. The memories of the long nights still fresh, many northerners might resent the free folks' raids of the past. Yet if they could set aside old hatreds, they would gain valuable resources. Free folk pelts, mammoth ivory, and skills gleaned from surviving the brutal lands beyond the wall. The free folk, in turn, needed steel, grain, and other goods that the North could spare. Sansa was wise to see the potential benefit, but it would be a delicate dance. He began drafting a reply at once. Your Grace, I am heartened to hear of the North's continued prosperity under your guidance. The matter of trade with the free folk is indeed a sensitive one, for old wounds remain on both sides. From my experience, those who call themselves free folk value reciprocity and face-to-face negotiation above all else. I suggest inviting a respected free folk leader and perhaps a few of their representatives to Winterfell to demonstrate good faith. He went on at length, proposing that Sansa designate a safe zone near the wall for the exchange of goods, that she publicly confirm the free folks' right to fair bargaining, and that she emphasize the new peace brought by their shared victory against the dead. Perhaps Tormund Giantsbane would be the best free folk leader to speak with. Jon trusted him implicitly. If Tormund was indeed still at the wall or roaming just beyond it, Sansa could at least contact him. By the time Sam finished drafting, the candle was guttering and he realized how dark the room had become. He sealed the letter, resolving to send it first thing in the morning by Raven. Then he rose, dousing the candle. His back was stiff, his eyes gritty from reading in poor light. He made his way down the corridor to his family's chambers, footsteps echoing in the silent keep. Inside, a single oil lamp still burned. Gilly lay curled under the blankets, fast asleep. Little Sam was in a small bed in the adjoining room, snoring softly. Sam slipped out of his tunic and sank onto the bed beside Gilly. She stirred enough to murmur his name, then drifted back to sleep. Sam closed his eyes, letting the day's weight pull him under. His last waking thought was of how he would juggle these latest crises tomorrow. He dreamed of Horn Hill as it had been in his childhood. Lush green fields, lowing cattle, and the forbidding silhouette of his father, Lord Randall Tarley, standing at the manor gates. In the dream, Sam was small again, trembling at the sight of that stern man. But then the dream shifted, and he was standing tall, wearing the hand's pin, with Gilly and little Sam behind him. His father's figure blurred, fading like a shadow that no longer had the power to frighten him. Sam felt both a pang of sorrow and a surge of resolve. When morning arrived, he awoke with a strange sense of calm. He dressed, left Gilly and little Sam to their morning routine, and hurried to dispatch the letter to Sansa. With that done, he confirmed that ravens carrying summons to House Fell in the Stormlands had been sent. Then he had a quiet breakfast of bread and weak beer. As he ate, Tyrion arrived unannounced, sporting a thin, tight smile. "Hope I'm not interrupting your meal," Tyrion said. "I found something interesting in a certain ledger that Bronn gave me to review. Concerns your old seat at Horn Hill. Well, your father's seat, I should say." Sam froze mid-bite. "Horn Hill? What about it?" Tyrion tapped the table. Turns out, under the old Tarley lineage, Horn Hill was due a sizable annual revenue from farmland near Ashford. But the records show that revenue has dried up. The farmland was sold off some years ago, apparently to cover debts incurred by your father. No official note as to who bought it. But the new occupant is behind on taxes to the crown. I suspect they're trying to dodge payment. Sam swallowed hard, feeling a tangle of conflicting emotions at any mention of Horn Hill. He hadn't set foot there since the night he fled to join the Night's Watch. He'd once believed his younger brother, Dickon, would inherit it all. But then Daenerys had burned both Randall and Dickon Tarly. The line had passed to Sam. By rights, he was the Lord of Horn Hill, though ironically, he had pledged himself to the Night's Watch once. The question of succession, his oath, and how that all meshed with the realm's new order had never been fully resolved. He had mostly avoided it, preoccupied by the duties in King's Landing. Tyrion gave him a curious look. You could claim the seat officially, you know. The vow to the Night's Watch was always complicated by the fact that the watch itself was nearly destroyed. Some might claim your vow is moot given the circumstances. Others might disagree, but you are the last surviving son of Randall Tarly. Sam let out a breath. I've never liked thinking about it. Horn Hill reminds me of unpleasant times. But Gilly and Little Sam live there part of the year, or at least have a place there. If the farmland near Ashford is being misused, that hurts the people who rely on it. Tyrion inclined his head. Precisely. The taxes, the farmland, the responsibilities, they remain in limbo until someone claims them. If you remain content to let the estate run itself, you may want to appoint a reliable castellan, someone who can manage it properly. Otherwise, unscrupulous folks will take advantage. That farmland's revenue is needed to help the crown in truth. Sam contemplated. He had no desire to style himself as a typical lord, especially not after everything that had happened. But he also couldn't let Horn Hill drift into chaos. I'll think about it, he said softly. Right now, I can't just leave King's Landing. But maybe I could send someone I trust to set things straight, gather the taxes, ensure the small folk are treated fairly. If Gilly is willing, we might eventually visit. But I can't just run from duty here. Tyrion gave a sympathetic shrug. No, you cannot. But keep it in mind. The realm's finances could benefit from a properly managed Horn Hill, and so could the people there. I'll let you mull it over. Sam nodded. Tyrion set the ledger on the table, then excused himself to see to other matters. Sam remained, finishing his bread in silence, his thoughts swirling with half-formed plans about how to handle Horn Hill's affairs. Perhaps he could appoint a steward, someone like a minor cousin or a wise retainer who'd served the Tarleys for years. That would require him to at least assert that he was indeed the rightful lord. Did he want that? Perhaps it was necessary. The vow to the Night's Watch had once been absolute, but the realm had changed. The watch was no longer what it was, and Horn Hill needed guidance. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, he rose, heading to his daily council meeting. The small council assembled in a repaired hall near the old Tower of the Hand. The table was oval, scattered with documents. Brand, of course, was present, flanked by Brienne. Tyrion took a seat, and Ilaria Jourdain of Dorne slipped in soon after, wearing a flowing dress of pale yellow with embroidered suns on the sleeves. Davos's seat was empty. He was presumably preparing to sail for Pike. Once everyone was settled, Sam cleared his throat and began. We have several matters to address today. First, the dispatch of ravens to the Stormlands. We've summoned House Fell to address the accusations from House Swiggert. We expect them within a fortnight. Bran offered no comment, only a small nod. Sam continued. Second, Master of Coinbron and I have devised a plan to hire a small group of privateers to secure the gullet. We'll pay them partially now, partially after they complete their patrols. The Crown's coffers are tight, but we believe this is our best short-term option. Lord Davos will negotiate with Yara Greyjoy for possible assistance from the Iron Islands. Ilaria tapped a lacquered fingernail on the table. And what role can Dorne play in this? We have ships too, but they're mostly used for our own coasts. Sam met her gaze. We'd welcome Dornish help, but we won't demand it. If you have spare vessels that can join the patrol, we could arrange favorable trade agreements for Dorne. Lower tariffs on certain goods entering King's Landing, perhaps. Ilaria's expression was considering. Send me the details of your proposal, and I'll speak with my own bannermen to see if any are willing. The Sea of Dorne is not so far from the Gullet, but we do have pirate troubles of our own along the Broken Arm. Sam nodded. I understand. I'll have the documents drafted soon. Tyrion chimed in. We might also explore a shared route. If both Dorne and the Crown Station patrols, we can keep the entire eastern coastline safer. but we'll need to hammer out terms. Bran's voice, quiet but firm, carried across the table. Ensure these negotiations proceed swiftly. The longer we leave the seas unsafe, the more we risk hunger and strife. Sam moved on. Third, a matter from the north. Queen Sansa is working to establish trade with the free folk. She seeks advice. I've already replied, offering suggestions, but I wanted to note it here. The north is not part of the Six Kingdoms, but it remains our ally, and such trade might eventually benefit the entire continent. Ilaria pursed her lips. Free folk? You mean the wildlings beyond the wall? Yes, Sam said. They've begun settling some areas freed by the thaw. Sansa believes trade could bring mutual benefit. Tyrion's eyebrows rose. It's not a bad idea. Fewer reasons for them to come raiding, more reasons to cooperate. Of course, some northerners will resent it, but Sansa knows her people. If an Yon can pull it off, she can. No one raised objections, though Ilaria made a wry remark about how the free folk might handle the Dornish heat if they ever traveled that far south. Sam smiled and continued, lastly, we've had an incident near Old Town, reports of outlaws harassing travelers on the road. The Hightowers are handling it, but they've asked if the Crown can spare a few nights. Our resources are limited, but perhaps we can send a token force to show solidarity. Bran gazed toward the far windows, which looked out onto the city. A small contingent, yes? Make it clear that while the Hightowers hold dominion, we stand united against lawlessness. Understood, Sam said. He jotted a note on his parchment. That's all for now, unless anyone has additional matters? No one spoke. Bran adjourned the meeting with a small motion of his hand, and the council rose. Sam lingered, cleaning up his notes and thinking about the never-ending swirl of demands from every corner of the realm. As the others departed, Tyrion hung back, offering Sam a faint smile. You do well, Sam, Tyrion said. Better than most who've worn that pin. Sam felt a flush of gratitude. Thank you. I only hope I'm not missing something crucial. Tyrion's smile turned rueful. You'll miss something sooner or later. All hands do. But you'll fix it when it breaks. With that rather sobering encouragement, Tyrion left and Sam prepared to set the next steps in motion. He went about the keep, issuing instructions to stewards, dispatching letters, ensuring casks of gold would be readied for the privateer captains. The day blurred by in a haze of minor crises, an argument over the new city watch uniforms, a complaint from a wealthy merchant about bribes demanded by a guard, a petition from a small group of priests of the Seven who wanted to restore a lesser sept near the dragon pit. Sam did his best to address each, though the volume of tasks threatened to overwhelm him. When the sun had nearly set, Sam realized with a start that he had neither eaten nor visited Gilly again that day. He grabbed a heel of bread from the kitchens and wolfed it down on his way back to his tower. At his office door, he found a young page waiting with a sealed scroll. From the Stormlands, my lord, the boy said, breathless. Sam thanked him, took the scroll, and broke the seal. It was from Lord Fell, apparently the very man House Swiggert had accused. Lord Hand, I have received your summons and will come to King's Landing to state our case. House Swiggert has wronged us more times than I can count. We will bring proof of their duplicity and show that any so-called looting is a fabrication. I trust you will judge fairly. If you do not, I have many swords at my disposal. Signed, Lord Fell. Sam grimaced at the threat implied by those last words. Another petty war waiting to erupt if the crown did not appease both sides. He set the scroll aside, exhausted by the constant posturing. Yet it was exactly these trifling disputes that, if left unchecked, could spiral into chaos. He recalled with a pang how Tyrion had once warned about dwarfs playing at mummers' farces while the real war loomed. Now, ironically, they had peace from White Walkers and dragons, but the bickerings of men threatened to crack that peace from within. He slumped into his chair, letting the tension seep out of him. A candle flickered. One day, he thought, the realm might truly function in harmony. Perhaps not in his lifetime, but maybe in his children's. For now, all he could do was patch the leaks as they sprang, keep the peace, and try to instill a sense of decency in the old feudal ways. A gentle knock on the door jolted him from his reverie. Gilly stepped in, carrying a small plate covered with a cloth. I thought you'd be hungry, she said, lifting the cloth to reveal roasted vegetables and a chunk of salted pork. You missed supper again. Sam's eyes lit with gratitude. Thank you. I lost track of time. She set the plate before him, along with a pitcher of watered wine. Sam tucked into the meal, savoring each bite despite its simplicity. Gilly sat on a stool beside him, glancing at the scattered parchments. They'll always need something, won't they, she murmured. Sam nodded around a mouthful of pork. Yes. I used to think maybe after we survived the long night and saw the end of the wars, everything would settle. But there's always another crisis. He sighed. I suppose that's just the way of the world. Gilly laid a hand on his arm. You're doing so much. You've already changed things more than you know. The city is better. The people are safer. Even I can see that, and I don't understand half of what goes on in these letters. Sam looked at her, warmth filling his chest. You see plenty. Enough to know the difference between fear and hope. He thought of how she had once been terrified, trapped in Craster's keep beyond the wall, forced to bear child after child that Craster would sacrifice to the others. She had come so far. They both had. She took a breath as though summoning courage. I've been thinking about Hornhill, she said quietly. I know it hurts you to remember your father and brother. But it's a good place for farmland and families. The people there deserve to know who leads them. Maybe you could set it right, Sam. He set down his fork, a pang fluttering in his stomach. You sound like Tyrion. Or maybe Tyrion sounds like you. He found some old records showing how mismanaged it's become. But I swore an oath to the Watch. And I'm the hand of the king. Gilly nodded. I know. But do you remember that day, all those years ago, when you took me from Hornhill? Your mother and sister were kind to me. People there can be good. And they need help now. If you can do something, it might help the crown too, right? Sam lowered his gaze, remembering how Lady Melissa Tarley and Sam's sister Tala had shown Gilly basic kindness, offering her clothes and a place at the table for at least one meal. They were good to you, yes, he murmured. Mother and Tala tried to shield me from father's wrath too, though they couldn't do much. Gilly's hand found his. If they're still there, or if Tala is, maybe you can reach out. Perhaps not right away, but soon. Sam inhaled slowly. You're right. I can't keep ignoring Hornhill just because it hurts to think about it. I'll do what must be done. She squeezed his fingers, relief in her eyes. Then she stood. Finish your meal. I'll wait for you. We can walk back together. After she left, Sam ate in silence, his thoughts turning to the broad green fields of the Reach and the memory of old hunts and tournaments that he had watched from afar as a boy, never participating. Would the small folk even remember him? Possibly they'd know him only as the child who left for the wall, or the rumored craven that Randall Tarley disowned. But times had changed. If he could bring stability to Hornhill, perhaps that would be one more piece of the realm set right. He finished his supper and tidied his desk just enough to make tomorrow's tasks less daunting. Then he escorted Gilly back to their chambers, where little Sam dozed in a corner, hugging a wooden sword one of the guards had given him as a plaything. Gilly kissed the boy's brow, and Sam gently took the wooden sword, setting it aside so little Sam wouldn't roll on it in his sleep. They settled into bed, Gilly curling against Sam's side. The tension in his shoulders eased as he listened to her steady breathing. Perhaps tomorrow he would write a letter to Tala at Hornhill. She might still be there, unless she'd married or traveled away. Maybe she could help him figure out a plan for the estate. He drifted off with that thought, half-formed letters swirling in his mind. The next day began much the same as all days in King's Landing. Breakfast on the go, courtiers waiting with pleas in the corridors, a swirl of letters. Sam found a quiet moment in mid-morning to compose the letter. Dearest Tala, I hope this letter finds you well. It has been too long since we spoke. I write with the knowledge that you may no longer be at Hornhill, but if you are, please know that I think often of you and our mother. I am sure you have heard of Father and Dickon's fate. Their loss has weighed on me, complicated as my feelings may be. The realm is in a time of rebuilding, and Hornhill is no exception. I wish to ensure our lands are managed fairly, that the small folk are cared for. If you are there, or if you know how to reach our mother, please respond. I want to do what is best for everyone. Your brother, Samwell Tarley, Hand of the King. He sealed it and sent it via Raven to Hornhill, praying that it would find Tala. If she had married, perhaps her husband would pass it on. That done, he turned to the day's tasks with a slightly lighter heart. A fortnight passed in a blur of administrative duties. Lord Davos departed, accompanied by a small retinue, to treat with Yara Greyjoy. The pirate threat lingered, though the first wave of privateer contracts had been secured, and they were expected to begin patrols by the next moon. Meanwhile, the Storm Lords arrived in the city. House Fell, House Swigert, a few smaller banner lords, all ready to present their feuding claims before the king and the Hand. Sam prepared meticulously, reviewing ancient deeds and boundary markers, reading about the storms that had shifted the course of a local river decades ago, which in turn changed the farmland lines. The details were tedious, but Sam wanted no confusion in the hearing. At last, the day came. The makeshift throne room was crowded with onlookers, knights, courtiers, scribes. Bran sat on a raised seat of carved oak, simpler than the old iron throne but still imposing under the high arches. Sam stood at his side. A dais was cleared in the center for the two opposing parties, Lord Swigert, red-faced and tense, and Lord Fell, stern, sporting a trimmed beard. Their respective retinues hovered behind them, armed with scowls if not swords. Brienne and the city watch flanked the dais, preventing any outbreak of violence. Sam opened the proceedings with a formal greeting. "We gather at the command of His Grace, Bran of the House Stark, King of the Six Kingdoms, to hear the dispute between houses Swigert and Fell. Both shall speak. Both shall show what evidence they have. Then His Grace will pronounce judgment." With that, Lord Swigert launched into a tirade detailing how his barns had been burned, how House Fell had stolen livestock, how they had disregarded the rightful border. He had half a dozen witnesses lined up, each testifying to sightings of men wearing Fell's sigil or carrying their house banner. Lord Fell countered with an equally impassioned claim that no such raids had taken place, that perhaps men disguised as Fell's soldiers had done the deed, or that Swigert's men were exaggerating for sympathy. The shouting escalated until Tyrion, standing near Sam, quipped in a dry voice, "I hope you have more than rhetorical flourishes, Lord Fell." Sam intervened repeatedly, requesting calm, sifting through their documents, which detailed centuries of shifting borders. Some parchments were so ancient that the ink had faded nearly to illegibility. After hours of back and forth, Sam began to suspect that the truth lay somewhere in the middle. House Fell had indeed carried out some raids, perhaps as a twisted form of retribution for an earlier slight. House Swigert, in turn, had exaggerated the scale of the damage, likely hoping for compensation that went beyond justice. As evening drew near, Sam called for a short recess so that he could confer with King Bran and the small council. In a side chamber, Sam, Tyrion, Ellaria, Bronn, representing the Master of Coin, and Brienne gathered around Bran, who listened intently but said little. Sam spoke first, summarizing, "It seems both lords are partly at fault. Swigert's father seized farmland a decade ago under questionable pretenses. Fell's men took it upon themselves to exact revenge, perhaps even to reclaim that land. The result is chaos. Swigert wants compensation. Fell wants the border redrawn." Tyrion scratched his chin. "We could split the difference, declare the land a shared domain, or award it to a neutral third party. But that might please no one." Ellaria said, "In Dorne, we'd settle such a feud by binding the houses in a marriage pact, or else letting them duel under controlled terms." Brienne frowned. "A duel might kill more than it solves. And forced marriage is not always the best solution, especially if the families detest each other." She paused. "But perhaps we can negotiate a bride or groom from each house to unify them, if they agree to it willingly." Bronn smirked. "They might prefer war to that." Sam looked to Bran. The king's face was distant, as though he gazed upon 1,000 potential outcomes. Slowly, he spoke. "Let the farmland be divided anew, based on the old river boundary before the storms changed its course. Let House Fell yield a portion of it to House Swigert in reparation for the raids. Let House Swigert cede another portion for the old claim that was never properly resolved. Where that new line meets, build a watchtower manned by knights loyal to the crown. They will ensure no further raids." It was a surprisingly detailed plan, but Sam knew Bran's intelligence often cut through confusion. Sam nodded. "We can implement that, though they may resist. But it's fair, each side loses something, each side gains something. The watchtower ensures they behave." Tyrion spread his hands. "If both houses resent it equally, it might just be fair. Let's do it." They returned to the throne room, and Sam delivered the king's decision. Predictably, both lords bristled, each arguing they deserved more. But Sam remained firm, citing the historical claims and the raids that had undeniably occurred. The watchtower idea received the strongest protests, but Sam reminded them that their continued conflict threatened the king's peace. In the end, with heavily clenched jaws, both lords had no choice but to accept the crown's ruling. Their retinues muttered grudgingly, but neither side dared defy the king outright. As they left, Sam felt relief wash over him, though he doubted the feud was truly settled. Still, for now, no blood would be spilled. That counted as victory. Bran left the dais quietly, Brienne following to ensure his safe passage. Tyrion sidled up to Sam, whispering, Well done. You handled that elegantly enough. Sam let out a small laugh. Elegance isn't the word I'd use, but at least no swords were drawn. Tyrion's eyes flicked toward the departing lords. It's a victory. If we can string enough small victories together, perhaps the realm can keep stumbling forward. Now fancy a cup of wine. Sam considered it. The day had been long and a headache throbbed behind his eyes. All right, he said, but just one. I have a letter to finalize for Lady Jourdain about the privateers. They made their way to a less crowded corner of the keep where a few casks of red wine had been brought in from the arbor. Tyrion poured 2 small cups and handed one to Sam. They leaned against a stone balustrade overlooking the city. The sun was low, painting the rooftops in gold. Sam sipped, feeling the sweet tang warm his mouth. Tyrion studied him. Do you ever wonder how different life might have been if none of us had chosen these paths? If Jon had never gone to the Wall, if Daenerys had never come to Westeros, if you had remained in Horn Hill? Sam swallowed, the wine suddenly tasting bittersweet. I do. Often. But then, none of us would be standing here. Tyrion nodded. And the dead might have consumed us all had certain choices gone differently. He took another sip. I used to think I'd be content with a small estate, a cask of wine, and a woman or two who didn't mind my company. Yet here I am, entangled in the realm's politics once again. Fate has a twisted sense of humor. Sam smiled wryly. So it seems. But maybe it's for the best. You have a knack for this sort of thing. And you, Sam Tarly, have more than a knack. You've brought empathy and reason to a position that usually sees only ambition and cunning. Tyrion raised his cup in a toast. Here's to more impossible tasks. And hopefully a bit of rest for us now and then. They clinked cups. Sam savored the moment of camaraderie. The sun dipped lower and the city's lights began to wink awake. If the realm could be guided by folks who, despite their flaws, genuinely cared about its people, perhaps there was hope. In the following days, Sam busied himself finalizing the watchtower plans for the Stormlands, signing the contracts for privateers, and coordinating with Illyria on possible Dornish involvement. The newly arrived captains who had agreed to patrol the gullet came to the capital to meet with the crown's representatives and receive their initial payments. Sam found them a motley crew. One was a tall woman from Lys with a scar across her cheek, another a hard-eyed man from the Stormlands who had once served on a pirate vessel himself before turning honest. They swore they would guard the shipping lanes for the sum promised. Sam prayed they wouldn't betray that oath. The city watched warily as those ships set sail, hoping they would fend off the relentless raids. A moon passed and the realm held together. Letters arrived from Davos, who reported cautious but improving talks with Yara. She was skeptical of offering her ships so far from her domain, but Davos believed he could persuade her with the right incentives. Another letter brought news from Sansa. She had invited Tormund Giantsbane to Winterfell and the free folk were open to trade. The negotiations were delicate but showed promise. Sam couldn't help smiling at that. Jon would have been proud. Then, one afternoon, as Sam returned from checking on the city's granaries, a raven arrived bearing the sigil of Horn Hill. He felt his heart skip. Hastening to his office, he broke the seal. It was from Tarly. Sam, I was so relieved to see your letter. I'm at Horn Hill now. Mother is not here. She went to visit cousins in the Westerlands some time ago and she moves about frequently, still grieving in her own way. But I remain in the estate. I've tried to manage the household with the help of old Castellan Roden, but matters have grown complicated. Some of the local bailiffs have taken advantage of the confusion and the farmland near Ashford was sold without Mother's final approval. The new owners never pay taxes, nor do they maintain the fields properly. The small folk suffer. I'm at my wit's end. I beg you to come if you can. Or at least send someone who can straighten this out in your name. The people need you. Father and Dickon are gone, but you live. Horn Hill still belongs to House Tarly. I know you serve a higher calling as the Hand, but your birthright is here too, and I believe you can restore honor to our house. I hope to see you soon. Love, Tala. Sam reread the letter, heart-pounding. Tala needed him. The estate was in shambles, as Tyrion's ledgers had hinted. He pictured the gentle hills of his childhood, the house he'd once feared. Now it was all waiting, neglected, for him to step forward. He lingered in his chair, torn between the duties of King's Landing and the call of his family seat. At length he stood. Gilly had often urged him to face his past. Tala was alone, struggling to keep Horn Hill afloat. The small folk were paying the price for the realm's confusion. Sam stared at the stack of documents on his desk, the daily business of the realm. Then he looked at Tala's letter again, hearing her voice in the words. Perhaps it was time to do both, remain the Hand but also not abandon Horn Hill. With so many capable members on the council, Tyrion, Ilaria, Bronn, Brienne, Davos, surely they could manage for a short while if Sam traveled to the Reach. The city no longer teetered on the edge of open chaos. The realm had stabilized enough that he might risk leaving for a brief period. If he delayed, Hornhill might slide further into ruin and Tala's pleas would go unanswered. Making up his mind, he called for a steward and drafted a note to the king. Your Grace, I humbly request leave to journey to Hornhill for a short time. My sister Tala has written of serious troubles that require my presence. I will return as soon as matters are settled. I believe Lord Tyrion, Ser Brienne, and Lady Ilaria can oversee the day-to-day governance in my absence. He wrote more, explaining the need, and sent it off. Bran might have foreseen it anyway. Sam suspected the king already knew. That done, he informed Tyrion of his plan. Tyrion agreed without protest, saying the small council could cover for him, though Sam mustn't take too long. Next, Sam told Gilly. Her eyes lit with a mix of excitement and concern. You'll be going alone? She asked. Sam hesitated. I think I should bring you and little Sam. Hornhill is our seat. If things are as bad as Tala says, I want you to see it too. Maybe you'll have ideas to help the people. Gilly's breath caught. I'd like that. I've not been back there in so long. It might be strange, but yes, let's go together. So they prepared. Sam arranged for a modest retinue of guards and servants to accompany them, not wanting to make a grand show but also needing enough security for the road. He left instructions for Tyrion to handle urgent matters with help from Brienne and Ilaria. The day before they were set to depart, Davos returned unexpectedly from Pike, bringing encouraging news that Yara Greyjoy had agreed to send 3 ships to help patrol the Gullet, provided certain trade rights were granted to the Iron Islands. Sam quickly signed off on it, grateful that Davos had been successful. Then, at dawn of the following morning, Sam, Gilly, and little Sam mounted a carriage accompanied by a small escort on horseback. The city gates opened for them and they set forth along the Rose Road, the wind carrying the faint smell of river reeds and farmland. Sam looked back only once to see the towers of the Red Keep receding behind them. Even from this distance, he could see scaffolds rising where new walls were being repaired and the banners bearing Bran's sigil fluttering in the breeze. He felt both anxious and strangely relieved to be leaving for a time. Perhaps it would do him good to reconnect with the land of his birth, to confront old memories and to help the people there. Gilly sat beside him, little Sam bouncing with excitement at every jolt of the carriage wheels. Outside, the fields stretched into the horizon, dappled with sunlight, promising a landscape that had endured war and winter yet still found a way to bloom. The journey took over a week at their moderate pace. Along the way, Sam took note of how the roads had improved thanks to the Crown's investment in labor crews. Sections that once lay broken by war were now patched or replaced. They passed villages where folk greeted them courteously, some recognizing the hand's pin if it peeked out from under Sam's cloak. Gilly pointed out fields of sunflowers that made little Sam gasp in delight. Here and there, they glimpsed signs of the new era. Small watchtowers with the 3-eyed raven banner. A traveling band of merchants praising the safe roads compared to just a year past. Yet as they drew closer to the Reach, Sam's nerves tightened. Memories, half-buried, rose to the surface. The day his father banished him to the Wall, the fear that had haunted his childhood. He forced himself to remember that man was gone, taken by Dragonfire. That cruel voice no longer held any power. The future belonged to those who lived. Finally, they climbed the rolling hills that gave Hornhill its name. Sam felt a jolt of recognition seeing the castle's spires in the distance. A proud fortress of pale stone perched among verdant slopes. The banner that once bore the striding huntsman of House Tarly still fluttered, though it looked a bit worn. Over fields of barley and orchard rows, Sam saw farmland that had grown wild in patches. Broken fences slumped, unpatched. A sense of neglect hung in the air. As they neared the gate, armed guards opened it, staring wide-eyed when they realized the visitors were the hand of the king and his family. A steward rushed out, bowing so low he nearly toppled. Sam dismounted from the carriage, smoothing his cloak. "Welcome home, my lord," the steward said, voice trembling. We didn't know you were coming so soon." Sam offered a small nod. "Is Lady Tala here?" "Yes, inside. She'll be overjoyed you've come." The steward motioned for Sam's guard to bring the carriage into the courtyard. Sam looked around. The courtyard was well kept in some corners, flowers blooming and stables in order, but in others he saw disrepair. A collapsed roof on an old granary, a missing chunk of wall near the kennels. Gilly stepped down beside him, gazing at the surroundings with a thoughtful frown. Little Sam hopped down, wide-eyed at the unfamiliar castle. Suddenly, the main doors opened, and Tala Tarly emerged. She looked older than Sam remembered, though only a few years had passed. Her dark hair was styled simply, and she wore a cream-colored gown. Her face lit up with relief and joy as she hurried forward, arms outstretched. "Sam!" He found himself hugging her, feeling a wave of emotions that nearly stole his words. "Tala, it's good to see you." She drew back, eyes glistening. "I can't believe you came. Thank you." She turned to Gilly, smiling warmly. "Gilly, welcome back. And oh, is this little Sam? You've grown so much." Gilly beamed, guiding the boy closer. Tala crouched to greet him, speaking kindly. The tension in Sam's chest eased a fraction. Whatever confusion haunted this place, Tala's welcome was genuine. She rose, beckoning them inside, and Sam followed. He recognized the entrance hall's high ceilings and the suits of armor lining the walls. He recalled scurrying through here as a child, terrified of alerting his father to his presence. They settled in a drawing room where a modest fire crackled. Tala dismissed the servants and turned to Sam earnestly. "You must be exhausted from the road. I'll have rooms prepared for you. But first, let me explain what's been happening. We're in trouble, Sam. Taxes are overdue, harvest yields are down, and the new so-called owner of that farmland near Ashford refuses to recognize our authority. I tried sending messages, but he ignores them." Sam folded his hands. "Who is this man?" Tala exhaled. "A hedge knight named Ser Eastmund. He purchased the land from father's stewards, but under questionable terms. He underpays the workers, keeps most of the produce for himself, and hasn't sent a single coin to Horn Hill or the Crown. The local bailiff has turned a blind eye, likely he's being bribed. Mother never formally approved the sale, so it's all in a legal gray area. But I have no power to force him off the land." Sam nodded grimly. "We'll sort it out. But I need to see the records, the old charters. If the sale was illegal, we can nullify it. The Crown can intervene if needed." Tala's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you. I'm just sorry it took this for you to return." "I know, Father," she trailed off, eyes flicking down. Sam touched her arm gently. "It's all right. Father is gone. We'll make do. Let's just help the people now." Gilly stood quietly, taking in the conversation. Little Sam poked around the room, curiosity shining in his eyes. At length, Tala showed them to a suite of guest chambers, large, airy, with windows overlooking the rolling hills. Sam found it strange to be a guest in what could be his own castle. Gilly commented softly on how fine the draperies were, while little Sam dashed to the window, fascinated by the distant orchard. Once alone, Sam looked around the chambers. He could almost feel the ghosts of his childhood lingering in the corners. But this was no time to dwell on the past. He told Gilly he needed to see the household records immediately. She nodded in understanding, offering him a smile. "I'll stay with Tala, see if there's anything I can do for the servants or the families." Sam kissed her cheek. "Thank you." He set off with Tala to the castle's old record room, a dusty chamber lined with shelves of ledgers, scrolls, and genealogies. The castellan, Roden, an elderly man with trembling hands, hovered about, apologizing for the disarray. Sam reassured him with a kind word, then spent the rest of the afternoon poring over documents by lamplight. Tala helped as best she could, retrieving volumes and scanning for relevant entries about land grants or sales. They found the original deed marking the farmland near Ashford as part of House Tarley's domain. The alleged sale was recorded on a single parchment with an unrecognizable seal, indicating that it might have been forged or contrived. Sam's father's signature was nowhere to be found. "This is worthless," Sam pronounced. "If there's no legitimate contract, the land is still ours." Tala's eyes lit with hope. "Then we can remove Ser Eastmund?" Sam's brow furrowed. "Yes, but we must do it lawfully. I'm the hand of the king, so we can press the crown's authority. I'd like to see him first. If he refuses, we can bring soldiers. But I don't want violence unless there's no choice." Tala gripped his hand. "Thank you. You have no idea how helpless I felt." Sam squeezed her fingers gently. "You're not helpless anymore. Let me finish checking these records. We'll confront him tomorrow." When the evening shadows lengthened, Tala departed and Gilly arrived, bringing a simple meal of bread, cheese, and stew prepared in the castle kitchens. Sam ate gratefully, letting Gilly stroke his hair as he read over the documents. She told him about the small folks' complaints, how some were forced to travel hours to find a functioning mill because the local one had broken down and no one paid for repairs. Others were short on seed for next season, uncertain if Horn Hill would provide. Sam's heart twisted hearing how the neglect had trickled down to families who once relied on the Tarley seed. They speak of your father with fear, Gilly said quietly. But they also have hope that you might be kinder. It's as if they don't quite believe it yet. Sam set the parchment aside. I'll show them. The next morning, Sam summoned the castle's guard captain, a stout, broad-shouldered man named Ser Talit, not to be confused with Dolorous Ed. This Talit was distantly related to the Northern House, a lesser branch. Sam asked for a small contingent of men to ride out and confront Ser Eastmund. Talit bowed, seeming cautious but respectful. Tala also insisted on coming, but Sam gently dissuaded her. Stay here with Gilly, ensure everything's in order. I don't want to risk you if he turns hostile.